Yo, what's good, Shinobi Nation? Welcome back to Just a Shinobi, the home of the craziest Naruto what-ifs. Today we're jumping into part 12 of What If Banished Naruto Azula's Bodyguard. Check out the full playlist. We come so far, so strap in, because things are about to get explosive. If you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter, and share this video with your whole ninja squad. And of course, drop your theories in the comments. Your support is what keeps this shinobi grinding. Azula sat at the counter of the kitchen. Even though she wasn't trying to, she kept looking over at Naruto as he wrote. It had been 2 days since they returned to Konoha. Since then, they hadn't been given any missions and Naruto had kept to himself, even from the rest of his team. He just sat in the house. At first, he sewed his own clothes, though she didn't remember the cuts that were present before the blonde came home. Afterwards, he returned to his own pet project, which was writing the novel. In those 2 days, whenever she tried to talk to him, his answers were short and clipped, like he didn't want to talk to her. On the one hand, she was a little annoyed by it. But on the other hand, she didn't really know what to do. Ever since she first met him, Naruto was always the upbeat, cheerful one who always had a very good sense of humor, both sarcasm and deadpan. But ever since they had come back to the elemental countries, it seemed like that person was slowly disappearing, and she didn't like it. Deciding to take steps, she stood up from her chair at the counter and walked over to the couch where Naruto sat. "Naruto, we need to talk," she said to him, sitting down next to him. "Put the pen down." He didn't put the pen down, only stopped its movements. "What do you want to talk about?" he asked her. "You and your current attitude," she answered. "It has to stop." This time, he did put the pen down. "And what is wrong with my attitude?" His tone was quiet, and his eyes were focused on her. "To begin with, you need to get out of this house. You've been in here ever since we got back from Kumo," she told him, her confidence overcoming her hesitation. "You even refused to play a game of Pai Sho with Sokka when he came by yesterday." So? It sounded like an innocent question, but she also knew it was a loaded question. One misstep here, and she would be shut out. "You've never refused a game of Pai Sho. It's one of the ways the two of you keep that ridiculous thing going." Despite what she said, she kinda wanted the point thing to come back. Ever since they had left Kumo, not once had the phrase "that's a point to you" been uttered. He gave her an annoyed look. "It is not ridiculous at all." And there he is, she thought triumphantly as the Naruto she knew and loved briefly showed itself. If it's not ridiculous, then why did you refuse the game? The annoyed look was replaced with one of melancholy. "I just didn't feel like playing a game, that's all," he told her as he turned his head and looked at the wall. She reached over and took his hand in hers. Surprised at the contact, he looked over at her. "Naruto, I know you think that it's your fault that B died, just like you've always thought that every man who died beside you or under your command was your fault. But you've got to move past it." He grimaced at those words. He had tried, Kami knew he'd tried. But it never seemed to work. They were always there, Gao, Ian, Old Lee, and even Killer Bee now. "I don't think I can, especially not after last night," he said to Azula. "What happened?" she asked, concerned. "Was it a nightmare?" He gave a dry chuckle. "You know, I almost wish it was. No, Sifu paid me a visit. He told me that the Akatsuki were currently sealing the Hachibi away. And since he already knew about how I'm currently beating myself up about it, he decided to be nice and not show me the process in a dream." His hand had unconsciously clenched into a fist. "There are days when I just really want to punch him." Azula didn't say anything in response. She just pulled him into a hug. He was surprised by the move but didn't complain. In fact, he returned it, relishing in the comfort and warmth of her embrace. He was glad for it. "Feel better?" Azula asked him after releasing him from her embrace. "A little bit, yeah," he answered. "Thanks, Azula." He smiled at her as she pulled back out of the hug. She was glad to see that smile, for it always managed to make her heart skip a beat. "I still want to punch Sifu though." She couldn't help but laugh at that. "Come on. Let's go for a walk outside. You need the fresh air after being here for 2 days," she told him. He nodded in agreement. They both stood up from the couch and walked out the door, closing and locking it behind them. They went down the steps and out onto the street. The storm that had hit the village was gone. In its place was a sunny blue sky complete with big fluffy clouds. People went about their business in the streets. Adults went past on their own business. Kids raced down the streets, intent on having fun somehow. And families headed for places to have picnics. No one really paid attention to the fire paragon and his girlfriend. If they did, they either ignored them or gave them a brief nod of recognition. Naruto preferred it like that. Any more than that, he would probably start arguing with that voice again. Don't focus on that, he told himself. Enjoy the day. And it was such a nice day, too. Hell, he was tempted to do a shikamaru and just watch the clouds. It would probably be very relaxing. The question was where was a good spot to look up comfortably. What are you thinking of? Azula asked, looking at him. I was just wondering where a good place would be to kick back and relax, he told her, deciding to omit the part about cloud watching, not knowing if she would laugh at the mere prospect of it. When she heard this, she couldn't help but give him a look. You've lived in this village longer than I've been in it. Surely you would know where a good spot would be. Hey, this isn't the Fire Nation. Things don't stay the same every year, he retorted, feeling a little defensive. Even when I lived here, there were always various spots that the villagers barred me from visiting. She gave the surrounding buildings a quick look. Well, that certainly explains the patchwork look it has. When he heard that, he smirked. Don't go knocking the patchwork, Azula. You and I both know that it is part of the charm the village has. Fair point. He wasn't wrong. The whole patchwork thing did give the village a sort of makeshift charm. Just like when she had seen it for the first time, it looked like the place was being added on and improved. Quite unlike the capital of the Fire Nation or Ba Sing Se, those places looked like they hadn't changed in the past decade, let alone the past century. Still, you should have at least some ideas of where to go, she said, re-emphasizing her point. Fine, I think I know a spot. Then by all means, let's go there. She stepped out of the way, ostensibly to let him take the lead. Thank you, I will. He walked past her and down the street. And don't look at my ass. Too late, she replied with a grin, her eyes immediately looking down at said ass. After she was done admiring it, she caught up with him. Together, they made their way through the streets and the people. Eventually, they went from the streets and people walking aside them to walking in silence to a gentle green slope of a hill. Here we are, Naruto announced as he stopped and lay down on the hill. Azula lay down beside him. It was both peaceful and comfortable. As she lay on the ground, she couldn't help but look up at the clouds. It's something to look at, huh? The blonde asked her, noticing where her gaze was at. She nodded in agreement. I can't believe that I've never actually looked up at them before. Considering who your father was and how you were raised, I don't blame you, he said with a shrug. You probably just thought that they were there to let you know that it might rain. She nodded in agreement with what he said. You're right. She focused on one particular cloud. You know, that cloud almost looks like a Fire Nation ship. Really? Asked Naruto. Do you see that part of it looks like the stern with the smokestacks right in front of it? She pointed at the parts she was talking about. Oh yeah, you're right. Now I see it. He looked over at another one. Ha, that one looks like Appa in flight. She could see why he said that. The cloud did indeed look like the sky bison in mid-flight, his tail about to flap down. That one looks like fawning. She pointed at another cloud. He looked at it, and couldn't exactly see it. Are you sure? He asked as he pulled out a cigarette and lighter. Of course, I'm sure. Can't you see how he's coiled up? She wondered how her brother's dragon was doing. Thinking she had been jealous, Zuko had offered to help her look for a dragon of her own. She told him that she didn't need a dragon, she had Naruto. He chuckled and said that he understood. Not really, no, he admitted, lighting the cigarette and taking a drag. It just looks like a cloud to me. Well, what about that one? She asked, pointing at a different cloud. Can you see anything in that cloud? Are you kidding? That one is easy, he said with a smirk. It's saying when he's about to do something stupid. They shared a laugh at that. The cloud did indeed look like the Avatar when he was about to do something dumb, and no one was around to stop him. You know, I have got to thank Shikamaru for this, he remarked after the laughter had stopped. She looked over at him. Why is that? He's the one who always wants to watch the clouds. Now I can see why he does that. It's peaceful. He took a slow drag from the cigarette. So one of the Konoha 11, people you want nothing to do with, gave you something that you like so much, you're willing to thank him, she said with a small smirk of triumph. It looked like all their nagging was paying off. He frowned slightly, like he was double-checking what he had said. Something like that, he said, even though he was silently glad she didn't laugh. Let's not go there right now. Let's enjoy the peace. He looped his arm around her and pulled her in a bit more to his side. She didn't complain or resist. In fact, she welcomed it. We really should have more moments like this, she remarked as she leaned into his side. She was half tempted to just close her eyes and drift away into sleep. Yeah, we should, the blonde agreed, also fighting off the urge to fall asleep. His eyes were starting to droop when a noise snapped them back open. Do you hear that, Azula? Yeah, I do, she answered, having also kept her eyes open. It sounds like someone screaming. She noted as the noise got closer and louder. Not just anyone. He sat up and looked at where the noise was coming from. That sounds like Sokka screaming. And as if the blonde's words summoned the man himself, Sokka burst out of a bush at the bottom of the hill, running like his life depended on it. And considering that after a moment, Nyla came through the same bush and after him, it probably was. Help! Screamed the tribesman as he ran to get away from the Shirshu. Hey, Sokka! Called out Azula as she sat up and watched him run. Having a good time? Does it look like I'm having a good time? He shouted at her before yelping and ducking to avoid Nyla's tongue. Try turning sharply. Naruto shouted down at him, sounding like he was trying to be helpful. It might help a little. He doesn't bank well. Okay. He turned sharply downhill. However, just as he thought he was safe by running through another bush, he suddenly tripped. All the others heard a surprised scream and the sound of Sokka falling into water. I probably should have mentioned the fact that there was a stream there, the blonde mused as he took another drag of his cigarette while Azula tried not to laugh but failed miserably. I don't think you need to chase him anymore, you manny excuse for fur. He shouted down at Nyla. The Shirshu swung his head to where Naruto's voice had come from and snarled. No, Nyla, you can't chase him, June told her Shirshu as she came out of the first bush, Akela and Suki right behind her. The Shirshu seemingly growled in frustration at being denied of attacking his favored target. Oh hush, I'll get you a good piece of meat later, the bounty hunter said, making Nyla perk up in excitement. Akela just yawned before lying down to the ground. Hearing movement coming from beyond the bush where Sokka disappeared through, they all saw the tribesman in question, completely soaked, walking back through it. You are a spirit's damned asshole, Naruto, he told the blonde, pointing an accusing finger. You knew there was a stream there, didn't you? Of course I did, but I don't see why you're angry, Naruto replied with a fake look of confusion. It got you away from him, didn't it? I don't see you running for your life away from him. That's because I filled my quota of being chased by angry Shirshu for the month, he said with a grin. That's a point to you, June commented. He walked right into that one, Azula said to herself. She was still loud enough for her boyfriend to hear her, making him flash a quick grin at her. And where were you when I needed help? Sokka said to Akela. The wolf just yawned again and laid his head down on his forepaws, closing his eyes. Traitor, the tribesman muttered as water dripped off. If I remember correctly, Sokka, you're the one who said you wanted to spar against me alone, June remarked from where she stood at Nyla's side. Yeah, you and you alone, he retorted. That means not having to sick your Shirshu on me when I was about to win. In his opinion, it was very uncalled for. Hey, we have to use any and all tools at our disposal when in a fight, right? The bounty hunter said with a victorious smirk. Don't quote FS Sensei to me, June. I suffered under his teachings before you did, he fired back. Even though he was grateful for the training Jiraiya had given him, the hellish training still made him shudder. Don't worry about it, Sokka, Naruto said, getting both their attention. She's the one who has to fight him later. You can have fun watching him beat her into the ground. The two men shared savage grins with each other while June had to suppress a look of horror. Sparring with Jiraiya was never fun for the person who was sparring, but immensely entertaining for the audience. But before they could continue, the man himself appeared before them. There you are all, the Toad Sage said as he came into view at the top of the hill. I was about to go hunting for all of you. He gazed over at Sokka. What happened? Sparring, the tribesman answered, not elaborating. Well, get dry quickly. We're needed by Tsunade. Do we have a mission? Suki asked him. No. We need to verify the fact we're not murderers. Last night, 3 people were murdered, Tsunade told them as they stood in front of her desk. They were found dead in their place of residence. The police force is still looking at the scenes, but they have told me that their deaths occurred around about midnight. And how do their deaths concern us? June asked her. She didn't look at the bounty hunter. Instead, she turned her gaze to Naruto. The people who are dead are Koharu Yuditane, Hamura Midokado, and Danzo Shimura. The air in the room went silent as all eyes turned to the blonde. I didn't kill them, he said. He wanted to say something a bit acidic, but that small part of his brain told him not to, and he wisely agreed. Where were you around midnight? She asked him, being the Hokage instead of Tsunade. At my home, with Azula. It's true, Azula agreed. They were asleep in each other's arms for that entire night. You could have had someone else do it for you, the Hokage pointed out, looking at the rest of his teammates. June scoffed when she heard that. I was throwing back drinks with the front gate guards at a bar well into the early morning, she said. They were a bunch of lightweights. What about you two? The leader of the village asked, looking at Sokka and Suki. When they were asked, they sprouted almost identical blushes. Well, we were up around that time, Sokka said. Doing what? If possible, their blushes got redder. Jiraiya laughed at that. Can't you tell by the blushes on their faces, Tsunade? He asked his teammate with a grin on his face. They were doing the bedroom tango. If Sokka's and Suki's faces had been red before, now they were lighting up like beacons. Fair enough, she conceded after looking at their faces. Are we the only ones being questioned? Azula asked her. No, your group is just one of the few I've talked to personally. You're dismissed. Her attention went back to the papers on her desk. The team took the hint and walked out of the office as well as the building. Well, that was random, Sokka commented, trying to get over the embarrassment of him and Suki being found out, even though the rest of the team already knew it. June shook her head. Murder is almost never random, she said in reply. That's where most of her high bounties came from. It's troublesome, but you're right, the voice of Shikamaru agreed with her. He and his team were walking down the street to them. She interviewed you guys too? Suki asked them. They nodded. We were one of the earlier ones, Choji answered. But ever since she talked to us, we've kinda been curious about it all. Shikamaru rolled his eyes at that. You mean Ino's curious, and she's just dragging us along, he told his friend. While Choji grinned at that, Ino scowled. It sure as hell beats lazing around your house all day, playing shogi or watching the clouds, she told Shikamaru. When they heard that last part, both Naruto and Azula shared a look and a quick grin. What are you two grinning about? Ino demanded, noticing the grin. Nothing, they said in perfect unison. That, of course, made it all the more suspicious. She said, not believing it. Anyway, what are we going to do about it? She asked the rest of the people there, deciding to get back to the main topic. What are you talking about? June asked back. There's nothing to do about it. We just go about our day. Oh, come on, June. Aren't you the least bit interested in what's going on right now? Will there be money for me at the end of it? Why would there be? It's a murder investigation, Shikamaru said, joining the conversation again. Which is exactly my point, June told him and by extension, his teammates. If there's no money in it for me, it's none of my business. Who the hell taught you that attitude? Ino demanded of her. She sounded like she couldn't believe it, even though it was said practically straight to her face. My dad while we were traveling the countries, she answered simply, and if someone actually listened, they could hear some amount of pride in her voice. He taught me a lot of things. I'm sure he did, the female Yamanaka said, almost to herself. Did he also teach you how to be a completely selfish bitch as well? He must have been a complete and utter bastard to teach you something like that. Oh, Kami help us, Naruto groaned as the words echoed around them. Why did Ino have to say that? He immediately stepped between her and the now furious bounty hunter. June, you know she doesn't really mean it. She has no idea what your dad was like, he told her, trying to ensure that things didn't get worse. June had a look of fury on her face when she heard those words Ino had said. She also had her whip out and ready to use. Then perhaps she should learn to watch her mouth. I don't badmouth her father, do I? Nyla, who started snarling when he somehow felt, or smelt, his mistress' fury, seemed to hiss in agreement. You don't know my dad, Ino told her. And you've never known mine. The bounty hunter snapped at the blonde female, raising her whip like she was about to use it. He taught me how to survive in this world. He taught me how to never show weakness to anyone, when to be ruthless, when to be cool-headed, and a great deal more. Ino, apologize, Shikamaru ordered his teammate, his gaze losing the lazy expression it wore. What? Why do I have to apologize? She asked, actually surprised by what her teammate said. She thought he would have taken her side in this. You're the one who insulted her father. Now apologize to her, he told her, his face stern and unyielding. Choji decided to keep out of it by busying himself with another bag of snacks. Before she sticks her exotic pet onto you. She looked like she wanted to protest what the Nara clan heir had told her to do, but she couldn't hold his gaze. Alright, fine. She turned to look at June. I'm sorry for insulting your dad. No one was sure if she meant it or not, but they were just glad that a potential fight didn't occur. Good. June lowered the whip and began to coil it up again. See that you don't insult him again. Otherwise, I won't let Naruto stop me or Nyla. The blonde in question released a deep breath he had unconsciously been holding. Looking over at Shikamaru, he gave the Konoha shinobi a brief nod of thanks. You know, we might as well go help out the police force in any way we can, Sokka said aloud, getting the attention from the group. I'm kinda interested in how they would do things in an investigation. Not to mention the fact you want to take a look at the stuff they have and see if you can reinvent it in your spare time, Azula remarked. The entire Team Paragon knew that Sokka was the ideal guy and inventor of both their team and Team Avatar. If there was something that got him interested, he would do his best to try and figure out how it works. There is that, he admitted, looking unashamedly unapologetic. Both Suki and Akela rolled their eyes when they heard that. However, the Kyoshi warrior couldn't help but smile as well. How troublesome, Shikamaru muttered to himself. Come on then, we might as well get over there. The police force gladly accepts any and all help, so long as the helpers do as they're told. How would you know that? Naruto asked. He would have thought that the lazy Nara would do anything to avoid something like that, claiming it would be both a drag and a pain. He shrugged and said, spent a turn there with Sasuke after you ran away. Did you think he joined up for the hell of it? When he didn't get an answer, he turned around and started walking. Come on, we might as well get to it. As it turned out, they weren't the only ones who decided to help out. Both Team Kurenai and Team Guy, minus their respective sensei, decided to help out as well. Grateful for the help, as the police force was still trying to recover from the loss of the majority of its members, the head of the force separated them and sent a team to help with the investigations. Team Guy was sent to help at the scene of Koharu's murder, Team Kurenai was sent to Hamura's murder, and Team Asuma was sent to Danzo's murder. I thought there would be more blood, Ino commented as she looked at the murder scene. 3 years ago, she might have thrown up at any amount of blood coming from a dead person. Now, she was proud to be desensitized about it, but she still felt a bit queasy if it was a large amount. He must have been killed by surprise, Choji suggested as he looked too. Danzo had been killed in what looked to be a small study in his house. As the police had already documented how the body was found and had been removed, the three of them were helping with the bagging and the tagging. Guys, we're here to help bag items of interest, not look at where the body was, Shikamaru told them as he examined a nearby bookshelf, ignoring the spray of blood on the desk behind him. Get back to work. We're going, Ino told him, turning her attention away from the blood and towards a cabinet that was near the door. Choji lowered himself and examined the desk, ignoring the blood on its surface. As the room had already been examined by the police force, they were to see if they had missed anything, after going through the mandatory warnings and reminders the police force gave to volunteering shinobi. So, Naruto seems to be doing fine, the female Yamanaka noted as she opened the cabinet with gloved hands. Are we really going to talk about that here? Choji asked her, looking over at her. It didn't really seem like the place to speak about that subject. Where else would we talk about it without a chance for him or his team to hear about it? Nowhere, Shikamaru said as he lightly traced the books on the shelf with his finger. We are never going to touch that subject again. It's gotten us nothing but headaches and trouble. Oh, come on, she said with a bit of a whine. Drop it, Ino. He's made it abundantly clear that he wants nothing to do with us. But he seems to be warming up to us lately, she protested. Haven't you seen him when he's around Lord Jiraiya? When the blonde had first been brought back, he treated the toad sage like the rest of them, like he didn't even want to be around him. Nowadays, the two of them traded barbs and insults. But they said them with a smile, a smirk, or a grin. Well, Lord Jiraiya did go with them when they left the first time, Choji pointed out. Maybe they just got used to each other while he was over in the bending countries. And if they can get along now, why can't he try and do the same for us? Because the difference there is that Lord Jiraiya has seemed to accept the fact that Naruto won't be staying while some of us have not, Shikamaru answered her question, turning his head to look at his teammate. What do you mean some of us? Ino demanded, looking right back at him and holding his gaze, her tone both indignant and surprised. Have you given up on bringing Naruto back? Troublesome woman, he muttered, breaking eye contact with her and turning back to the bookshelf. But he could still feel her gaze trying to pierce the back of his skull. Yes, I've given up trying to bring him back. This is his home, Shikamaru. He belongs with us, she said, her voice raising an octave. And look where that attitude has gotten us. Getting led around by the nose and Boss Sing Se and then getting captured like a couple of amateurs, failing a very important mission in the process, Shikamaru answered sternly. And it's not like we were friendly towards him when we were younger. Technically, that's not true, Choji pointed out, standing up to look at his two teammates. Aang did defeat the Fire Lord and bring the end to the war, with Naruto's help I might add. You know what I mean, Choji. We weren't there to help Aang end the war. Thus, we failed our mission. And then he made us choose to leave. If that's not a hint to leave him alone, it would be too troublesome to figure out what would be. He focused his attention back on the books. He didn't want to continue this conversation anymore. But he knew that Ino wouldn't let it go. But he still came back, the female Yamanaka said in protest. If he wanted us to leave him alone, why would he come back? Ino, Lord Jiraiya brought him back the first time by force. Now he's back to help take care of the Akatsuki, Choji told her. Once that's taken care of, he and his team will probably be gone quicker than we can blink. Don't tell me you've given up too, Choji, she said to him with an accusatory glare. Helping out with the investigation seemed to be the last thing on her mind, even though it was her idea in the first place. At this point, it is rather hopeless to think that he'll stay. Maybe he'll try to stay friendly after he leaves, but it's a bit of a small hope. He looked his teammate straight in the eye. But the question I have is why do you care so much having him back, Ino? She was silent for a moment before she spoke again. It's for Sakura, she confessed. I wanted to be a good friend and help bring back her old teammate. But what if Sakura has given up too? The Akimichi clan heir asked her. She had a hard time believing her friend would give up that easily. She wouldn't. Both she and Sasuke wanted Naruto back the most. They wouldn't give up that easily. Shikamaru said, mostly to himself. It was enough to get the attention of his teammates. What's up? Choji asked his teammate, looking over at him. Ino swung her gaze to him as well. It might be nothing, but there's a book on the shelf that's a little odd. It's a textbook from the academy. Why would an experienced shinobi like Danzo have something like this in his bookshelf? He asked aloud. Reaching out, he took hold of the book and pulled it out of its place on the shelf. As soon as the paper left the wood, a section of the wall behind the desk disappeared. How troublesome, a weight-sensitive, passive genjutsu, the lazy shinobi said aloud as they stared at the now obvious passageway. So that's why he had the book. Choji didn't say anything in return. Instead, he went over to the study door and poked his head out. We found something, he announced to nearby members of the police force. While the three Konoha teams had been sent out to the murder scenes, Team Paragon had stayed at the headquarters of the police force. Azula and Sokka were having the time of their lives by being given an informal seminar on how everything worked by a veteran of the force, of which a curious Suki joined. Naruto and June helped out any way they could, which mostly consisted of getting someone something. As they helped set the information of the 3 murders on a board, 2 members of the force who were on the case looked at it. So, they were killed one after the other, with Lord Hamura being the first and Lord Danzo being the last, the man of the 2 said, looking at the times of death. Which means the killer had a partner or was very fast, right, Eiko? He asked his teammate, a female Hyuga. You forgot that he might have used clones, Genji, she told him. If the killer was able to, he could have used clones to kill them. She eyed Naruto's back as she said those words. But wouldn't the deaths have occurred simultaneously if that was true? Genji replied, ignoring where her eyes were looking. That would depend on whether or not the first death was caused by a clone or not, Naruto chimed in as he tacked a picture onto the board. If the clone had started the killing, it could have dissipated and let the others know. If it had been the original, he would have to have made a clone and then dissipated it to the other clones now. You seem to know a lot about how to use clones, Eiko noted, still trying to pin him to the board with her eyes. He stopped what he was doing and turned to face her. If you think I killed them, you're wrong, he told her with simple ease. Having said his fill, he turned back around to the board. Even if I had the motive, I wouldn't last long in a battle against Danzo, let alone the other 2 elders. True. You did have a motive, and you had a grudge. It's basically revenge, right? She said with an accusatory tone. And it's only day 1 of the investigation as far as I know, he replied, not bothering to turn back and face her. Try not to get ahead of yourself. She would have snarled at the blonde, had her partner cut her off. He's right, Eiko. We still don't have all the data. So let's just wait until we do before we start throwing accusations around here. She stood up from where she leaned against the desk. I'm getting a drink. She threw a glare at Naruto's back before walking away. If the place hadn't been busy, odds are her footsteps would have filled the room. So, what's her problem? June asked Genji. She was not blind. She had seen the looks from Eiko as well as some of the others had been throwing at Naruto's back. But for now, she just wanted to know about Eiko. She has a small crush on Sasuke, he answered with a shrug. When he heard that, Naruto had to suppress the shudder he felt coming on. But he couldn't suppress the flinch. She is at least 10 years his senior, he commented without turning around. Mr. Pot, you really shouldn't be calling Mr. Kettle black, the fox told him with very dry sarcasm. The irony in what the blonde said was too much to be ignored even if he had tried. Was I talking to you? He asked with a bit of irritation. You are now. Frankly, I was getting worried. Ever since what happened 2 days ago, his Jinchuriki hadn't said a word to him. But now, he was, for which the Biju was glad. That doesn't stop her, Genji told him. Hell, half of the women here keep undressing him with their eyes whenever he's here. It's a little funny sometimes. This time, the blonde couldn't hold it in, and shuddered for everyone to see. How did he end up here anyway? June asked, as she and the cop ignored the shudder coming off of the blonde. I thought that shinobi were always out of the village doing missions and whatnot. He grinned at that. Well, some of us prefer a slower pace. But as for Sasuke, that's already an old story. I haven't heard it. Truth be told, she was a bit of a sucker for a good story. That was half the reason why she went to taverns and inns, the other half was obvious. She's a bounty hunter, where else would she go for info on targets? He laughed. Good point. Anyway, it was 3 years ago. Sasuke had taken a leave of absence from the shinobi ranks in order to receive therapy. But aside from that, he didn't really have anything to do. So, being bored one day, he decided to come here. But as he walked through the front door, he encountered 3 nasty pieces of work, 3 chunin from the homicide unit. We weren't ever sure if they knew who he was or not, but when he told them he was there to see if he could help in any way, they told him that they had the perfect job for him. Which was? June pressed him. They took him to the file storage room and told him to sort out the entire room. The last thing they told him was he couldn't come out until he was done. By the time they had bothered to tell anyone about him, it had been 3 days later. When the captain and quite a few others raced down to free him, they had expected to find a hungry, thirsty, and angry Uchiha. What they found instead was that Sasuke, not realizing it had been 3 days because he thought he was taking short naps, had not only sorted out the file room, he also completely redesigned the filing system, making it better organized. He had also discovered by looking through some of the cold case files that the 3 Chunin who had sent him there had been bribed to tamper with evidence. How did that turn out? No one wept when the captain fired the 3 of them and put in a recommendation to the Hokage that they be stripped of their shinobi status. After that, the captain allowed Sasuke to volunteer with the police force during his leave. Some of his friends even volunteered as he did, but he was the only one to stick to it. When he came back to the ranks and had been promoted to Chunin, he had asked the captain if he could join the police force. The captain agreed and hired him part-time. What does that mean? Naruto asked, joining the conversation. He had been surprised by the fact that Sasuke of all people would have taken a leave of absence. He said the Uchiha would have been out of the hospital bed as soon as he could and get back in the field. Now he didn't understand what part-time meant when it came to Sasuke and the police force. The captain knew that Sasuke would still want to go outside the village on missions for the Hokage as well as probably hunting for you, he said, looking the blonde in the eye. So, he allowed Sasuke to join in such a way that he could still be a part of the police force and also go on missions, hence, hiring him as part-time. Before anyone could say anything else, Eiko came back in a hurry, with no drink in hand. Genji, come on! She shouted at him as she went past. We got something new! What's going on? He asked as he ran up to catch her. Jun and Naruto, having been caught doing nothing to do, went after them. The team at Lord Danzo's house discovered a passageway that led deep underground. I don't know all the details, but we might have just found out who our killer was. That made him hurry up, which in turn made Naruto and Jun hurry up. They arrived at a room that had a screen hanging off of the wall opposite of the door. To the blondes and bounty hunters' surprise, their teammates were in there as well. What's going on? Sokka asked as they walked in. Somebody at Lord Danzo's home discovered video footage, Eiko told them. Apparently, he was paranoid and had set up the latest model of security cameras all around his house and the village. We've gotten the latest footage, and we also found the one for where he was killed. How's that coming, Hayo? She asked the man who was fiddling with a nearby camera. Got it, he declared, flicking a button on the camera. Someone closed the door and the blinds. Team Paragon did so without question, now interested in what the camera might show them. As soon as the room darkened, the camera came on, beaming light onto the screen. It showed Danzo's study, and judging by how dark it was, it must have been night outside, as they had already known. They watched as Danzo walked out of the passageway and sat down at the desk. He didn't reach for anything, he just sat there like he was waiting for something. It soon became obvious why he was waiting. Another person came out of the passageway within minutes of Danzo. He stopped behind the chair Danzo was sitting in, hidden well enough in the shadows they couldn't see him. Come on, show us your face, Genji muttered as he kept his eyes glued to the screen. They didn't have to wait long for something to happen. With a flick of their wrist, whoever stood behind Danzo produced a kunai. With a single stroke, he slashed Danzo's throat open, letting blood spray out from the wound. As his head fell onto the desk, his murderer walked out of the shadows and looked directly at the camera. Cammy, she's a member of the ANBU. Hayo swore as they all looked at the murderer. He was dressed like an ANBU member. He had the necessary gear along with the tattoo on his shoulder. The only thing that would have made him stand from other ANBU members was his mask, which looked somewhat like a weasel. The murderer looked at the camera for around a minute or so. He then turned back around and walked back into the passageway. Before he went in, he created a clone. As he walked down the passageway, the clone took a book from the desk and put it in an opening in the shelf, causing the passageway to disappear, before dispelling itself. The video went on for another 2 minutes before ending, showing only the dead body with the blood coming out of the neck. Why the hell was an ANBU murdering an advisor to the Hokage? Eiko demanded as the screen went blank. Perhaps whoever did it was under orders, Genji suggested. But from who? The Hokage didn't know anything about the deaths until we informed her of it, and she's the only one who commands the ANBU. She stifled a groan of frustration. It's going to be difficult to try to figure out who that person is now. No, it won't. The veteran who was showing Sokka and the others how everything works said with a grave tone. What do you mean, Kazuhiko? Hayo asked him. I thought that an ANBU's identity was known only to the Hokage and her advisors? They are. But whenever an ANBU is picked, the Hokage sends a profile listing all the information we need to know about him, including the mask they wear. And each mask of an ANBU is unique. That mask belonged to someone who betrayed the village in such a way. The Sandaime Hokage had no choice but to reveal his identity to both us and the normal ranks in case we ever came across him using that mask. Who did that mask belong to then? Sokka asked. He seemed to take a deep breath before he answered that question. It belonged to Itachi Uchiha. The entire room went silent as those words went through their heads and they processed it. It was something they wanted to think they heard wrong, but knew that they didn't. Kazuhiko, are you saying that Itachi Uchiha snuck back into the village and killed 3 people? Eiko asked the veteran, sudden nervousness filling her voice. He nodded. Yes, I am. Oh, fuck me, Genji said. It was a sentiment that was silently shared by everyone, though most members of Team Paragon remembered how the man in question fought at Kozan. Those who didn't had been filled in. We've got to inform Lady Tsunade about this. If Itachi is still in the village, we could already be in danger. Both Eiko and Hayo agreed with what he said. As the 3 of them looked like they were about to move, Naruto was frowning at the screen. Something's wrong here, he said, mostly to himself. But he was still loud enough for the others to hear him. What do you mean by that, Naruto? Azula asked him. It's been a long time since the Uchiha clan massacre, and until now, the only time Itachi had come back to the village was when he thought I was still there. He could have killed Danzo and the others then if he could. So why did he wait 3 more years before finally doing so? He asked, not really expecting a good answer. Well, why do you think he did it? Hayo asked him, ignoring Eiko's pointed glare that was somehow telling him to shut up. I don't think Itachi would do something like this, the blonde said with conviction. It doesn't really mean anything to him. So, unless these murders are somehow a distraction, I don't. He trailed off as he realized what that meant, his eyes going wide at the idea. You don't know what? Sokka asked him. Everyone had unconsciously leaned towards him when he had stopped talking. Eiko, you said that Danzo had cameras set up all around the village. Does that include the Uchiha district, the hospital, and the Konoha 11 building? Yeah, it does. Like I said, the man was paranoid, she answered with a shrug. And we have all the latest footage from these cameras, right? She nodded. He turned to look at Hayo. Do we have the footage from the Uchiha district? We do, but it only shows the front entrance, Hayo answered. Where are you going with this? Could you find it and play it, please? The cop did as he was asked, finding the correct footage and putting it into the camera. Once again, it projected a beam of light onto the screen. It showed the entrance of the Uchiha district. Nothing changed for the first couple of minutes, but then the same ANBU that had killed Danzo walked through the entrance, a mere 10 minutes after Danzo's time of death. They kept on watching with bated breath, and when they saw the ANBU again, Naruto released him. Son of the bitch, swore the blonde. I knew it. No one said anything else, but they all knew what he meant. The ANBU had walked out of the entrance and over to the camera, letting it get a good look at him. Then he turned away, allowing the camera to see what he had slung over his shoulder as he walked away. It was his little brother, Sasuke. Are you absolutely sure about this? Tsunade demanded of Team Paragon as they once again stood in her office. Their ears would have felt slightly plugged if the silent seal had been put into effect. Unfortunately, the news of their discovery had spread like wildfire inside the village. Completely sure, Naruto answered. We checked the footage 3 times. Itachi murdered all 3 of your advisors and kidnapped Sasuke. However, we don't know where he went after. Aside from the 4 cameras he allowed himself to be seen on, they had no idea where Itachi had gone. She could feel a headache coming from all of this. I need a drink, she thought. But the crisis on her hands was much more important than throwing back a few rounds of sake, and she needed to stay sober for it. What the hell was Sasuke doing in the Uchiha district? I thought both he and Sakura were in the hospital. A day ago, the 2 in question had shown up at the hospital and asked to be treated. When they had been asked about the cause of their injuries, their answer was sparring that accidentally got vicious. Seeing as they had many shinobi come with similar injuries and similar reasons, the hospital staff didn't push any further. From what Hayo found out, once Sasuke had been initially treated, he checked himself out, against the doctor's orders, Sokka told her. For some reason, even though he wasn't, the tribesman felt like he was on trial. He must have gone to the district then. But why would he go there? June asked, wondering aloud. She was already thinking about how to track down the missing Uchiha, mentally going through all the information she had on him. The kid did that sometimes when he wanted to be alone, Jiraiya answered her question. We never bothered or pushed him about it. They had always figured that he wanted some time alone. And look where that got us, Tsunade told her teammate. She pinched the bridge of her nose and took a deep breath. I'll have to send out every single tracking team the village has. If Itachi is already a day ahead of us, we have no idea where he could have gone. He couldn't have gotten far. He should still be inside the land of fire, Suki protested. She's right, the bounty hunter on the team agreed. Besides, you don't need to send out all the tracking teams. You just need to send us out, she said with complete confidence. It would have bordered on arrogance if she didn't think she could back it up. The Hokage looked at her. And why is that? She shrugged. Because I am the one who has the Shirshu, she replied. If you've got something that has Sasuke's or Itachi's scent, Nyla can track them. She does have a point. Nyla's nose is something, Jiraiya told his teammate, having remembered the Shirshu led them to Ba Sing Se following the scent of Iroh that came from a stinky sandal. Tsunade was silent as she considered it. Alright, fine. I'll send you and your team to hunt for Itachi. But I'm also sending 2 teams with you, just to be sure, she told them, making her decision. Which teams? Naruto asked her. The small part of his mind told him off, saying that he shouldn't ask questions of the Hokage. As he usually did, he ignored it, but he was also finding it harder to do so. It was like one of those annoying mother-in-laws he had heard married soldiers complain about, it just would not let up. Teams Asuma and Kurenai, they'll meet you at the gates. I'll also send Kakashi too. You are dismissed. The younger members of Team Paragon turned around and left the room, closing the door behind them. As soon as she heard the door close, she let out an audible groan. You know what? Fuck it, she thought. Jiraiya, I don't care what Shizen or Taunton will do to me. Pull out that damn sake, she ordered her teammate as she rubbed the sides of her forehead. He didn't make a joke or said anything in response. He just went and got the sake as instructed, even pulling 2 cups out to use. His silence was broken after they both drained their cups. Well, this puts us in a bit of a predicament, he remarked. That would be putting it mildly, Tsunade grumbled as she reached for the sake bottle. Itachi couldn't have picked a worse time to do this. Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh. I think it's safe to say that it hasn't been a good time to kidnap an Uchiha since the massacre, he told her, earning himself a glare in response. Look at the bright side. He did you a favor by killing those 3. I failed to see how that is a good thing. Come on, Tsunade. We both know Danzo was a war hawk and Koharu and Hamura were more inclined to agree with him than us. They were the ones who came up with that Kami-forsaken plan in the first place. You forget. We were the ones who agreed to it, she retorted, making him frown. She thought that he was trying to deflect the blame of what happened, and couldn't let that happen. They were to blame as well for that. The point remains that you are now rid of 3 problems that have been hounding you since you took the position of Hokage. Itachi did us a favor, the Toad Sage repeated. And he also stole Sasuke, which I think pretty much cancels out that favor. Not to mention the fact we don't know whether this was on the orders of the Akatsuki or if he was doing this on his own. She snapped. They stayed silent for a minute, staring at each other. Finally, Tsunade closed her eyes with a sigh. I never did say I was sorry, did I? Sorry for what? He asked, a little confused. For what happened to your daughter, the Slug Sage clarified. When she had learned what happened to her, she had drained 4 bottles of sake that night, and fell asleep at the desk, where Shizen found her the next morning. Despite coming from his loins, Jiraiya's daughter had inherited almost none of her father's habits. It would have been none at all, if she had worked in a different place. Why are you apologizing? You didn't cause her death, he said, taking another drink of sake. Even though he tried to cover it, she could tell that he was still hurting. I'm still sorry. She was a good person. That she was. He put the cup down. I need to go get ready. He left the office, all but slamming the door shut behind him. She didn't say anything, she just poured another round. It's not just her death that haunts him. The others still do, she thought sadly. While his daughter was not the only child Jiraiya had sired, she had been the only one to have reached adulthood. The others had either been stillborn, died of a sickness, or had been killed by vengeful shinobi. All of them had made her teammate cry, but it was the last one that earned him the nickname of Sato no Kyoki, the village's madness, for he would hunt down those who murdered his children. And every time he did, she and Orochimaru, when he was still loyal, would be right behind him. So don't worry, Sakura, Ino said to her friend, standing by her bed. We'll get Sasuke back. At least this time, he didn't leave voluntarily. She offered a weak smile at her admittedly poor attempt at humor. No one said a word about it. It was already uncomfortable enough in the hospital room. Sakura, however, just smiled back. Thanks, Ino, she said to Yamanaka. Both the Konoha teams were in the room as well as Team Paragon, although Naruto was hugging the wall and trying to stay out of sight of Sakura. I'm sorry I can't go with you guys. Don't complain, Kiba told her. We'll be back with Sasuke before you know it. I'll hold you to that promise, Kiba. Even though she didn't say anything of the sort, it almost sounded like she was going to hurt him if he failed to bring the Uchiha back. He all but flinched away at those words, hearing the silent threat in them. We should probably get going. We delay any longer, Itachi's going to have a bigger lead. He quickly left the room after saying that. Despite the manner in which he left, Kiba is correct, Shino stated. We should leave soon. He left the room, following his teammate. Hinata went after them, giving Sakura a wave of farewell before going through the door. This is going to be so troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he left. But even though he said those words, everyone still there could tell he was focused just by looking at his eyes. They were determined. Choji followed his friend and teammate out, just as determined as he was. Ino gave Sakura one last reassurance before going after them. Would you two wait up? She shouted after them, making her friend smile again. Team Paragon began to file out as well, with Naruto being last in the line. When he was about to leave the room, Sakura spoke. Naruto, wait. He turned in silence and faced her. They stared at each other for what seemed like a long time to the blonde. Finally, he couldn't hold her gaze and looked away. What do you want? He asked, looking out the window. She got out of the bed and walked a little shakily over to him. Taking hold of his chin with her fingers, she moved his head back so that they locked eyes again. You will bring him back, she told him, her voice commanding. All of a sudden, the blonde found himself remembering the start of that thrice-damned mission 3 years ago. He could remember the woman in front of him sobbing and begging him to bring Sasuke back. But now, she wasn't sobbing. She was ordering him to do the same thing. He found himself nervous and afraid of her. He wanted to look away, but her eyes held him in place. Knocking her hand away from his chin, he bolted out of the room and past the other teams. He did not stop until he was out of the hospital and about halfway to the gates. What in the name of Kami is wrong with you? Kiba demanded as he came up to the blonde, riding on Akamaru. Have you forgotten how rude it is to run in a hospital? Normally, he would have said something sarcastic, but that small part of his brain, as well as the fact that he could still see Sakura's eyes pinning him in place, ensured that he didn't. Sorry, he said, not making eye contact with the Inuzuka. He would have continued ranting, but that single word made him stop. Did you just apologize? He asked. Hey guys. Naruto just apologized to me. He shouted back at the others, who were catching up to them. While it is indeed surprising, you need not shout it for the whole street to hear, Shino admonished his teammate. Oh come on, Shino. It's something that should be known. Shut up already, Inuzuka, Naruto told him, his voice clipped and short. When he heard that, Kiba wanted to retort. But one look at the blonde's face made him change his decision. It was a look that promised severe pain, dismemberment, or death if he didn't. Sheesh, you can tell they used to be on the same team, he silently remarked. They've got the silent death threat down pat. Is everything okay, Naruto? Hinata asked, forcing herself not to stutter. It was really hard to fall back into old habits whenever the blonde was close. Is it any concern of yours, Hyuga? He asked back in a snappish tone of voice. She winced at those words, like they had actually slapped her. He would have continued, had Azula not put a hand on his shoulder and made him look her in the eye. After they made eye contact and kept it for a couple of seconds, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Thanks, he told her in a whisper. While the others could only watch them in stunned fascination, the members of Team Paragon kept walking to the gates. They really do love each other, Ino said in wonder. While she knew that they were together, it had never really dawned on her until just now. This is going to make bringing Naruto back much harder. When noticed that they weren't following, Sokka looked back at the two Konoha teams. You guys might want to keep up, he told them. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. We're coming, Shikamaru assured him. Troublesome man, he muttered to himself when he saw the tribesman turn his head back around. Hinata gave the Nara clan heir an amused look and smile. That troublesome man has been your toughest challenger when it comes to shogi, she said. Whenever the two of them sat down for a round nowadays, it was always interesting to see who would win. Why do you think I call him troublesome? He asked her. Never mind, let's just get moving before they do actually leave us behind. They quickly went after Team Paragon. They caught up with them within a matter of seconds. They spent the rest of the short walk to the gates in silence. When they got there and saw both Jiraiya and Kakashi waiting for them, June took the lead. Okay, who's got something that has the younger Uchiha's scent on it? She asked them from atop of Nyla. Choji has his Chikudo, Shino told her, answering the question. The Akimichi pulled it out for everyone to see. Alright, hand it to one of my teammates. He did so, giving it to Suki, who then held out for Nyla to sniff. The Shirshu leaned forward and started sniffing the Chikuto. You got the scent, Nyla? She asked him. He turned away from the blade and strained to run out the gates. Then let's go. The Shirshu took that as a command and lurched forward, running down the road away from the gates of Konoha. Follow that Shirshu, Sokka commanded, taking after them with Akela at his side. The others followed his example and went after them. In a mere matter of seconds, all anyone could see of them was a large dust cloud that was rapidly getting smaller. Location unknown. Toby waited in silence. While all 6 Pains and Konan were sealing away the Hachibi, along with a few Zetsu clones to help the process along, he was waiting for an important message. Soon enough, the original Zetsu appeared from out of the ground. Well? The masked shinobi asked, getting to the point. It's done, the white part of Zetsu told him. Itachi has Sasuke. And where is he now? On his way to the designated location in the Land of Water, the black part of Zetsu answered. He should arrive soon. Good, he declared. We shall go meet up with him. I take it that Deidara is already there? Yes, he is. By the way, Toby, Pain has asked that you might want to consider adding new members to official positions within the Akatsuki. Tell him to look over members himself and give any noteworthy ones to me later, he ordered with a non-committed tone. And will you look over them? The white part of Zetsu asked him, curious to hear what he would say. I might and I might not. In the end, it doesn't matter. With that said, he disappeared into the swirling vortex that was focused on the hole in his mask. When he was gone, Zetsu vanished into the ground. Location unknown. When Sasuke came to, he was groggy. He couldn't feel his own body, and he had the vaguest sense of moving. But all he saw was complete and utter darkness. What's going on? He asked himself, trying to open his eyes, only to find out that he couldn't. He then slowly realized that he had been blindfolded. He tried to reach up and take the blindfold off, but his hands were bound. As he tried to figure out how his hands were tied, a voice spoke. I see that you're awake, Sasuke. He was still in shock. He knew that voice very well. It was his brother's. He kidnapped me. He figured out with dawning horror. It's too early for you to come, little brother, his brother told him. Go back to sleep. He was still struggling weakly when he vaguely felt a thump on the back of his head. No, I can't, he thought weakly before he finally went under again. Location, Retrieval Team. They had been pushing hard all through the day. But just as the sun began to set, Nyla began to tire. They could tell it was happening by how the Shirshu was slowing down. When they reached a clearing in the forest, June reined in Nyla. Okay, we'll make camp here, she declared as she got down. Nyla seemed to make a whining sound, making her look at him. No excuse, you're tiring, and we both know it. She's right, you lousy excuse for fur, Naruto agreed, casually insulting the Shirshu. Nyla didn't do anything in response to that insult. He just lay down on the ground and weakly hissed at him. See? You're too tired to try and kill me. If the Shirshu hadn't been tired, the blonde would be avoiding his tongue right now. Naruto, stop insulting Nyla, June admonished him. Alright, set up the stuff and get the dinner fire going, she ordered the rest of the group, looking at them. We'll eat a good-sized meal tonight because we'll be eating breakfast and lunch as we move tomorrow. Also, we'll be up and moving before dawn. No one said a word in complaint, although Ino looked like she was about to, but decided not to after getting looks from both her teammates. They all got to work and set up their respective stuff. Once the sleeping bags were out and ready to use and the fire was going, the food they had hurriedly packed came out and over the fire in the form of a stew. Hey Naruto, where's the ramen? Kiba asked the blonde, part curious and part humorous. He hadn't really seen Naruto eat ramen ever since he had been brought back to Konoha. Quite frankly, it was a little unnerving. I would have thought that you at least had some of the instant variety lying around. We're on the hunt for someone which requires us to be ready as soon as we can. You'll have to forgive me if I don't find eating ramen, instant or otherwise, to be a priority on this mission, he replied with acidic sarcasm. Inuzuka winced, like the words had actually hurt him. Be nice, Naruto, Sokka told him. He didn't mean anything by it. It was a stupid question. No, a stupid question would be, did we forget the meat? And that's a point to him, Jiraiya commented in an offhand manner. The other members of Team Paragon agreed with that assessment with nods of their heads. Even Akela was nodding in agreement. Nyla didn't because he was too busy scarfing down the steak June had tossed at him. In any case, stew's done, the tribesman declared, pulling out the ladle and giving himself the first serving. The rest of them took the ladle one by one and served themselves. The next few minutes were spent mostly in silence, aside from the sounds of them eating. There was no conversation, just them trying to fill their bellies. When they were done, there was some small talk, but they mostly just stared at the fire. Hey Sokka, how have the others been doing since we left? Choji asked, briefly hesitating when he came to the end of the question. He also looked over at Naruto but quickly focused back on the water paragon. Aang and the others are doing okay, he answered as he gave a second, but smaller, helping of the stew. They've got their hands full with making sure the new country is coming along. And making sure that Aang doesn't do anything stupid, Azula chimed in. Again, the members of Team Paragon agreed with what she said. My, isn't that harsh of you, Kakashi commented from where he sat, his face occasionally covered by the shadow of the fire, which helped him eat his food without anyone seeing what was under his mask. No offense, Kakashi-sensei, but you haven't met Aang, Ino told the masked shinobi. He could be a little idiotic sometimes. Sometimes? Repeated Naruto, like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Am I the only one who remembers that little zoo incident in Ba Sing Se? And don't talk to me about his belief that the colony of Kozan would actually be spared, that was just plain stupidity. Luckily, it degenerated into an actual battle that woke him up to what war really is like. Even though they somewhat agreed with him, the two teams that had gone to the bending countries gave him a stern look. That's a little uncalled for, Naruto, Shino admonished him. He is not that bad. No, he kinda is, Sokka replied. Trust me, had you guys been there earlier in the adventure, you would have seen a lot more of Aang's stupidity. He probably would have mentioned Katara's acts of stupidity but decided not to, mostly because of the fact that she was his sister, and they were currently focused on the Avatar. But he does have his moments. He quickly defended his friend. June scoffed at that. Like what? She asked, clearly still not having a high opinion of the last air nomad. That one night in Ba Sing Se after the war, the tribesman answered with Naruto nodding in agreement. That was probably a night they were never going to forget. Flashback. The two of them had been sitting at a corner table of the Jasmine Dragon, enjoying a quiet evening. They had been dealing with the business of the new country all day, and it had gotten exhausting near the end. Now they were relaxing, enjoying a cup of tea and a game of pie show. And I win, Naruto declared, moving a tile into the spot that gave him victory. Sokka saw that as well. Spirits take it, he grumbled good-naturally as he sipped his tea. Don't be too hard on yourself. I learned how to play this game from the master himself. As if he had heard those words, Iroh came out from the back, serving people his tea. The tribesman laughed at that. You have a point there, he conceded as he watched the Dragon of the West enjoy his passion. You want to play another round? Sure, why not? The blonde replied, taking back his tiles and readying the board for another game. Sokka did the same in silence. Once everything was ready, so were they. But before they could start again, Naruto groaned and covered his eyes. What is it? Sokka asked him, immediately on edge. Aang's here and is coming straight towards us, he explained, hands still covering his eyes. The water paragon sighed in relief. Don't scare me like that, Naruto. I thought something bad had happened. He doesn't count? Be nice, he told his fellow paragon before turning his attention over to the air nomad coming their way. Hey Aang, he said in greeting. You want to join us? Thanks, Sokka, Aang replied as he sat down next to the tribesman. Hey, listen. Can you guys help me with something? He asked the two of them, suddenly nervous. What did you do this time? Naruto asked in exasperation. It felt like they were getting to the point where they couldn't turn their backs on him. If they did, he was off to his next idiotic idea. It's nothing like that. He immediately protested, leaping to his own defense, almost knocking his chair over. Even though the blonde looked like he didn't believe him, Sokka paid close attention. What do you need? He asked. I need you two to keep an eye on me while I talk to someone. And why would you need to have us watch you as you talk to someone? The tribesman asked him. Usually, if Aang wanted to talk to someone, he didn't ask for someone to watch out for him, even after everything that's happened. Who I want to talk to isn't exactly alive, he admitted. When he said that, both Sokka and Naruto had an idea of what he wanted to do. Either he wanted to go into the spirit world or bring someone out of it. As it turned out, it was the latter. Once the two had agreed to help him, they ended up heading down into Old Boss Sing Se, though Naruto advised them going through the palace, as the old badger mole was busy at that time. As they reached the place where Naruto had turned the tables on them, they walked through the water, with Naruto walking on top of it to reach the center of the area. Amidst the sound of rushing water, Aang sat down and began to meditate. Both Sokka and Naruto hung back as the blue mist began to roll off the avatar and shifted until it was in front of him, coalescing into the form of Roku. Hello again, Aang, the previous avatar greeted the current one with a warm, grandfatherly smile. What is it that you need? The truth, Roku, he answered in a cold tone, well, as cold as he could be. His face was set in a stern expression that actually made him seem older than he was. The truth? Repeated Roku. What truth? The truth about what caused the war. How it actually started, he explained. I want to hear what happened from your mouth. I have already told you what had happened, Aang. I had even shown you what had happened. The previous avatar sounded vaguely annoyed at the fact that he had to repeat himself. Aang closed his eyes and sighed. I had hoped it wouldn't be true, but I guess it was a foolish hope to begin with. The annoyance in his voice had been replaced with curiosity. What do you mean? The last of the air nomads opened his eyes and looked straight at his predecessor. You've lied to me, Roku. You've been lying to me all this time. He was angry at the fact that his past self would do something like that. I have never done that to you. I have always told you the truth. It's your truth, the truth that you would want me to believe. But it's not the truth. It's not the truth of what happened, he stated with a look that dared Roku to say otherwise. And he dared. What I have told you is the truth, he insisted, his face now frowning slightly. Anyone who has told you otherwise has been lying. So Sud lied to me? Sud? He repeated, surprised at what he heard. Yeah, Sud, Naruto chimed in. You know, your old earthbending master whose little sister you killed? Even though he sounded cheerful, everyone there could hear the accusatory tone in his voice. Sud died a long time ago. It would have been impossible for you to talk to him, Roku objected. It was impossible for him to be alive. Funny, he seemed alive the last time we talked to him, Sokka ideally commented. Then let him approach me. I would appreciate knowing that one of my old friends is still alive. Sorry, not happening, the blonde told him. Sud doesn't even consider you a friend anymore, let alone an old one. He sounded pleased as he saw the look of pained surprise appear on the Fire Nation avatar's face. Sud told me what truly happened all those years ago, Roku, Aang told his predecessor. He told me about how you thought that the Paragons were restricting you. He told me about how you murdered his little sister and your supposedly best friend's son. His face darkened as he noticed what was hanging around Sokka's and Naruto's neck, as they had pulled them out for this. The moment they took those medallions and became paragons, they stopped being those people. They became restrictions on the Avatar. You must be wise, Aang. Do not let the words they tell hold you back. When he heard those words, the current Avatar scowled, which he didn't do often. You mean like how you told me to be decisive because you weren't? I heard about what happened at Udao during that fire. You seemed pretty decisive then when you murdered those two. It had to be done, Roku shouted, looking furious for the first time. The Avatar is supposed to keep the balance between the bending countries, by any and all means. In order to keep the balance, the countries must stay separate. Those colonies were an invitation to chaos. I tried to make people understand this, but the paragons were always there to stop me, always threatening me with permanent exile or death. You were overstepping your boundaries, Roku, Sokka told him, his voice cold and face harsh. If all of the bending countries agree on something, even the Avatar must obey their decisions. The Avatar has no boundaries and obeys no one. The bending countries listen to him. And if any try to hold him back or restrain him, it is his duty to remove them. I've heard enough, Aang declared, earning everyone's attention. Your actions caused the war that lasted 100 years, Roku. Because of you, a tyrant took the throne of the Fire Lord. Because of you, countless people lost their lives fighting in this war. Because of you, the colonies had forgotten what they were supposed to represent. And now, we must fix your mistakes. You plan to allow the colonies to continue? He sounded both somewhat horrified and angered at the mere idea of it. No. We plan to take them all and turn them into a fifth country, a new country. No! You cannot do that! Roku shouted in outrage. You would destroy the balance of the four countries. No, we would make it stronger than ever before. So you would destroy everything the previous avatars have worked so hard for? You shame us, Aang. It appears that I must once again help you see the right path. The blue mist that made him seem to reach out, trying to grab the air nomad. But it recoiled when both Naruto and Sokka stood in front of Aang, eyes pitch black as they protected him from the mist. You forget your place, Roku. They told him as one, their medallions infused with the same blackness. You are no longer the Avatar, you are merely a guide to your successor. Yet you shame your position and forget what you were meant to do. The Avatar does have boundaries. If he did not, he would be a tyrant. We, the Paragons, are not there to restrict the Avatar. We are there to ensure that he uses the powers he's been given for the benefit of the bending countries. And if I don't, my life is forfeit, Aang said quietly as he stood up from where he sat. When he had first heard what the Paragons were supposed to do, he had been both scared and horrified at the mere idea. But now, he has accepted it. It was a part of the burden he carried as the Avatar, something his predecessor hadn't accepted. As you are now, Sokka said, staring down at Roku. We deliver judgment upon you, Roku. You are banished from the Avatar's sight, Naruto declared. You will never appear before him again nor try to advise him as long as he knows who he is. Now begone. The blue mist dissipated at his order and Roku disappeared for good. End flashback. That was one of the rare times Aang acted like the Avatar he was and not like the 13-year-old idiot he wanted to be, Naruto said, finishing the story. The Konoha shinobi, aside from Jiraiya, who had heard the story soon after it had happened, had been spellbounded by the story. Wow, Ino said. It was the only thing she could say. She had no idea that the kid she and her teammates had protected could do something like, she didn't count what happened in the desert, as he was very angry at the time. Sounds like Aang is growing up, Kiba remarked with an easy grin. Yes, he sounds different from the boy we originally met just outside of Omashu, Hinata agreed. She almost wanted to see Aang again after listening to that story, just to see how much he had changed. When he heard those two, Naruto snorted in derision. He's not growing up fast enough, he told them. And it's getting annoying. Cut him some slack, Naruto, Suki protested softly. He's only a kid. So are we, but we don't have that excuse, he retorted. I'm not going to cut him any slack when he insists on acting like an idiotic kid. Again with the pot and the kettle, you really need to stop doing this to yourself, Gaki, the QB remarked from within. Number 1, that was 3 years ago, and number 2, I was not talking to you, he mentally at the fox. He really didn't need it at that moment. He does have a point, Shikamaru said, earning everyone's attention. Naruto, I mean. Just because Aang is 13 doesn't mean he should act childish. Confronting Roku was a good step to being more mature, but he can't just stop there. Well, it's a pity we're not around right to keep an eye on him, Azula remarked with an innocent expression on her face that everyone just knew was faked. And why is that? Jiraiya asked, deciding to see where this was going to go. I'm fairly certain that he was about to enter puberty when we left. It would have been very entertaining to see how he behaved around Katara, she said with a smirk that seemed almost vicious in nature. There was a moment of silence around the fire before everyone, minus a slightly confused Kakashi, burst out laughing. It went on for a good 5 minutes as the image in their heads was just too funny. It also helped relieve them of some of the pressure they had on their shoulders about their mission. Oh, by the spirits, Sokka said as he winded down from laughing. Thank you for that, Azula. That would have really been something to watch. Yeah, now I wish I was there watching it myself, Suki remarked. She would probably have a hard time containing her laughs whenever she saw it happening, but she would enjoy it. We probably won't miss much, Jiraiya commented. He's got a couple of years, and that gives us plenty of time to see him be awkward around her. He grinned and mostly everyone there grinned back at him. Kakashi didn't because he wasn't following. On the other hand, the laughter died off of Naruto's face and he stared at the fire in silence. Well, if he does, you guys have a good time, June told them. I doubt I'll be around to see the action happen. You're not staying with us? The Kyoshi warrior in the group asked her. She was a little sad at the prospect that the bounty hunter would leave. She shrugged. Nothing personal, Suki, but once we get back to our side of the planet, I'll probably be on my way to my next bounty. Besides, if I stuck around, I don't think I could stop myself from giving that brat an ass-kicking. That's a fair enough point, Sokka conceded with his girlfriend nodding in agreement. If they were being honest, they had forgotten about the bounty hunter's dislike, if not outright hatred, for the Avatar. Don't worry, odds are one of you guys will run into me down the road. It'll probably be more so when I finally decide to take an apprentice, she said, almost to herself. Have you given that any thought, June? Naruto asked her, taking his gaze away from the fire. His silence had been noticed by a few people. They all decided not to say anything about it, at least, at that moment. No, not really, she admitted with another shrug. I've got time before I make up my mind. But if push comes to shove, I'll just take one of the Avatar's kids. Wouldn't that constitute kidnapping, especially if Aang refuses to allow you to do such a thing? Shino asked her. It sounded like a kidnapping to him, and he was fairly certain that Aang wouldn't let something like that happen to his children. She smirked in response. Not if I put it the right way. What does that mean? Hinata asked. If I wave the words our nomad culture and heritage in front of him, he'll have no choice but to accept what I offer. Whether or not he likes the idea, being a paragon of the air nomad is just as important as being an airbender, she explained. Of course, Sifu would have to explain to us the rules of taking in apprentices, especially if a prospective paragon candidate may be related to either the royal families or even the Avatar in question. That's bound to open up a new set of troubles. How very cold of you, Kakashi commented. He didn't sound like he was insulting or accusing her. He made it sound like he was discussing the weather. Hey, it's not happening tomorrow, I've got plenty of time, she defended herself. She looked over at her fellow paragons. So how about you guys? You figure out who'd you want for a student? Suki shook her head in the negative. I haven't really given it much thought either, June. But off the top of my head, I'd say I would gladly teach a person who would want to prove himself. I'd take someone who wanted to be as good as any bender and be able to stand on his own 2 feet than someone who thought it would be easy. I hear that, Sokka agreed. For me, I'd probably take someone who wanted to be known as their own person. Someone who didn't want to get something because of the family name she has. Not bad, you too, June told them before looking over at the blonde. What about you, Naruto? You got anyone in mind for an apprentice? He stayed silent for a minute, staring at the fire. Someone who's passionate enough and has enough of an iron will to stand for what they believe, he finally said. Had he spoken any softer, everyone else probably wouldn't have heard him. Okay, I think it's time to catch some shut-eye, Jiraiya declared, standing up from where he sat, putting his bowl down. Everyone agreed and began to move around, putting their bowls away and heading to their respective sleeping bags. The only person who didn't move was Naruto. "I'll take the first watch," he volunteered, taking out a cigarette and lighting it up. Although his bowl was put away, he hadn't moved from where he sat. "Fine, wake one of us in an hour," Jiraiya told him. He nodded in acknowledgement of the order. Soon enough, everyone else was asleep, although Azula had given him one last look, which he had waved off, before going to sleep. As he stared at the night sky, all he could think of was Sakura's eyes and how they held him in place as she ordered him to bring her teammate back. "I guess things really have changed," he mused as he took a drag and blew the smoke into the fire. "She's not the same person she was 3 years ago." It had been a fact he had known ever since that first talk in 3 years he had with Team Kakashi. But he hadn't really realized it until that moment. "Of course she isn't," that small part of his brain spoke up. "She has become a powerful shinobi. Perhaps when you are finally done with this mission and come back to Konoha, you could ask the Hokage for her hand in marriage." "I am not going back to the village," he shouted at the voice. "And I have a girlfriend already, who I would never leave. She is a foreigner who has no loyalties to Konoha. As such, it would be both better and wiser for you to choose someone from the village to share your bed," it told him in a cool, collected tone that made him set his teeth on end. But even though he did, somehow, the words made sense to him. It would be better in the long run if he chose to be in a relationship with someone from inside the village. Realizing where his thoughts were going, he shook his head, like he was trying to shake those thoughts loose. "Screw you and your wisdom, I love Azula. I would never betray her." "Very well, I am willing to make concessions. If you can convince her to stay in Konoha and be loyal to Konoha, you would be able to live with her," it said, keeping that cool and collected tone. An image of him and Azula came to the blonde's mind. They were in the house. He was wearing a village headband and held her in his arms, gently stroking her slightly swollen stomach. It was a picture of happiness and content. But it wasn't something he wanted. "That's not going to happen," he stated. "I do hope to have that kind of future with Azula, but it will never be inside the village. We'll have that kind of life on the other side of the planet." "Do not be so sure. After all, the future is not set in stone, but your loyalty to Konoha is." It still had that cool, collected tone, but now it also sounded like it had already won this argument. "I am not loyal to the village." The voice didn't respond. It just left him there, in the night, and with his thoughts. He was now less sure of what he wanted to do once the mission was done. Throughout his watch, he silently wrestled with the idea that he might be loyal to the village after all. The next few days, they spent chasing the scent. They had paid no attention to where they were. They just focused on following Nyla, who was focused on following the scent of their target. "How far behind are we?" Kakashi asked June as they ran through a shallow canyon. "We're still a day behind," she answered, keeping her eyes on the path ahead of them. "This Itachi is keeping on the move. Right now, either having him slow down or stop completely would be the only ways to catch up." "I noticed that as well," he replied, agreeing with her. "Same here," Kiba said from the other side of her. Akamaru was able to keep pace with Nyla. If anything, he looked like he was enjoying it. "Maybe we'll get lucky, huh?" "I doubt it," June said, keeping her focus on the trail. They kept on running through the canyon, now in silence. There was no need for long periods of conversations. That was what the fire at night was for, which they were all looking forward to now. Just as the end of the canyon came into view and got closer and closer, Akamaru suddenly stopped. "Whoa! What's wrong, buddy?" Kiba asked the dog, who began growling. The Inuzuka frowned for a brief moment before sniffing the air. His eyes went wide for a moment before he covered them with a groan. "We are such idiots." "What's the matter, Kiba?" Hinata asked her teammate. Everyone else had stopped, and now looked at the shinobi riding the dog, of which some were looking at him with irritation and annoyance. "We should have paid attention to where we were going," he answered, still covering his eyes. Akamaru seemed to whine in agreement with his human partner. "What does that mean?" Sokka asked. Akela was at his side and sniffing the air, trying to figure out what had caused Akamaru to stop. However, Kakashi had already sniffed the air and had figured it out. "We're in the land of Earth," he told them. At that moment, the retrieval team found themselves surrounded by shinobi with headbands bearing the symbol of the Wagakure. Location unknown. When Toby formed himself into the cave, he could tell something was wrong. He was in a cave that led to a deep system of tunnels that was situated in the land of water. Deidara was supposed to be here already and have the place ready to go. And yet, the place was dark and he heard no one else in there with him. Wordlessly, he reached out, grabbed a torch he could vaguely see in the dark, and lit it with a quick jutsu. What's going on? The white part of Zetsu asked as he came out of the ground. Something is not right here. Follow me, he ordered, walking into the tunnel at the end of the cave. As he went, he lit other torches he found, giving them more light to work with, and yet, they still didn't see anything that was wrong. Where is Deidara? The black part of Zetsu wondered aloud as he walked. He should have realized that we were here by now and come to us. Perhaps something has happened to him? His counterpart suggested as he and Toby walked into a larger cave. I gathered that much. The question is what happened to him. I'd say something permanent, Toby remarked as he walked around the room, lighting the torches. Zetsu had thought that was him injecting something into the conversation. But when the cave was fully lit, they saw that it wasn't that at all. Against the wall that led to another tunnel, which would then lead into the system of tunnels, was Deidara. His throat had been slashed, and judging by the look of surprise on his face, he had been caught off guard when he died. He had to have been dead for a couple of days, for he didn't look freshly dead. This cave and the tunnel system is a secret, the white part of Zetsu stated. It's almost impossible to find unless you know what to look for. Which someone did and used that to his advantage, Toby said as he stared down at the dead body. He also knew that Deidara was here and was able to catch him by surprise, killing him. What does that mean? The black part of Zetsu asked him. He turned to him, the Sharingan in his right eye almost seemed to blaze with something like anger or fury at that moment. It means that Itachi has betrayed us. They were escorted to the office of the Tsuchikage by 4 IWA and BU. All weapons had been removed, though that didn't mean they couldn't fight without them. On the other hand, Akamaru, Akela, and Nyla had been penned and kept under close watch. None of them said a word, as they knew the wrong one would end up getting them killed. They were a little nervous as well, but they kept that in the back of their minds. Now wasn't the time to let that emotion be in control. Jiraiya and Kakashi would take the lead and they just had to follow. They stopped before a set of doors. Lord Tsuchikage, we've brought them, one of the ANBU in the front said, his voice coming out clear, despite wearing a mask. Bring them in, the old voice of the Sandaime Tsuchikage ordered. The ANBU in the front pushed the doors open, letting the two in the rear make the group walk into the room. Despite being the office of a Kage, it looked nothing like the ones in Konoha or Kumo. While it wasn't as large as the Raikage's office, the walls weren't stacked from top to bottom with bookshelves. Instead, the few shelves that were there were within easy reach of the Tsuchikage. The rest of the walls were lined with photos. The man himself sat at the desk, which made the younger members of the retrieval team wonder if it was to his height, or if he was sitting on something to appear above it. Ah, a team from Konoha, he said as he looked at them. Lord Inoki, we apologize if we're intruding, Jiraiya said, bowing his head in respect. The others followed his lead. Of course you're intruding. I would like to know why you're intruding. He looked over the rest of the team. You've even brought your village's wayward Jinchuriki and his friends, no less. If anyone on Team Paragon were insulted by what he said, they didn't show it. We are here on a mission, Lord Tsuchikage. That's all, Kakashi assured him. The Tsuchikage scowled at the masked shinobi. As one of the agreements from the last Shinobi World War, if a foreign team must enter a country, said country and their shinobi village must be notified beforehand. I did not receive such a notification. This is a breach of said agreements, as well as common diplomatic etiquette. I apologize for that. We were put together for a mission at the last minute, and we didn't really know where we were going, the Toad Sage explained. We should have sent a message to the Hokage to let you know about us, but we had been so focused on our mission that it had slipped our minds. It must be quite the important mission if Konoha shinobi were in a rush, he drawled with hard-hitting sarcasm. So, who was kidnapped this time? This time, they were surprised by what he had said. What do you mean by that, Lord Tsuchikage? Choji asked nervously. Do you think I am blind, boy? The old man snapped at him. I can see quite clearly that you have an Inuzuka in your team as well as Kakashi Hatake, who is also known for his tracking skills. For both of them to be in this team of yours, which was supposedly brought together at the last minute, means you're tracking someone, and since that you did not realize that you had crossed into the land of Earth, means whoever you are tracking is a kidnapper and has kidnapped someone of importance to Konoha. He's good, Azula remarked quietly. In a way, the old man behind the desk reminded her of Naruto, and to a lesser extent, Ozai, with the way he could see things. Then again, he probably wouldn't have gotten to where he was now and had stayed there by being blind and or stupid. It is as you say, Lord Tsuchikage, Hinata said. We're tracking a kidnapper, and we've been on the trail for the past few days. Ah, the heiress to the Hyuga clan speaks, the Tsuchikage noted, glancing at her. The last time your village was in such a panic was when your Jinchuriki ran away. And since he is here, it must be someone else important to Konoha. Could you please not talk about me like I'm not here? The blonde asked with a growl, scowling slightly at the old man behind the desk. Do I care? Come to think of it, if everyone in this village had known who you really are, you wouldn't have gotten out alive, the Tsuchikage replied back snidely. Then a sly grin stretched across his face. Oh, I see. The last loyal Uchiha has been taken. But who, I must wonder? Maybe it was his brother. He saw the answer on their faces and his grin grew wider. His brother it is then. Please, Lord Inoki, we need to get back on the trail with speed, Jiraiya all but begged him. If we lose the trail now, we may never find it again. But why should I let you do such a thing? He asked back, the grin still on his face. How about the fact that if you don't, I'm going to disembowel you? Naruto threatened out of the blue, surprising everyone on the team. His hand was already holding a kunai, and there was a look of barely held anger on his face. The ANBU in the room moved to take him but stopped when the Tsuchikage held up a hand in a stopping motion. I'd like to see you try, brat. I'd certainly say you'd have the spunk for it, he said with a grin. Lord Tsuchikage, he threatened to kill you, one of the ANBU said. A lot of people have done far worse to me for a long time, he replied, his tone dismissive. The man who spoke realized what that meant and fell silent. If I were to tell you where your target might be found, would you believe me? They were surprised by the offer, not expecting it. What's the catch? Kiba asked, suspicious of said offer. The catch, as you call it, is that if you find your target there, I want you to kill Itachi Uchiha. While it sounded like an easy request, everyone in there knew that it wasn't. Trying to kill Itachi Uchiha was like attacking Aang while he was in the Avatar state, very stupid and suicidal if you had no idea what you were doing, very risky if you did. Agreed, Jiraiya said, making the team even more surprised. Lord Jiraiya, is this wise? Shino asked him. The Toad Sage looked back at him with a somewhat amused look. What? Did you think we were just going to grab Sasuke and run? He asked back, half sarcastic and half serious. Killing Itachi was always part of the mission. Then we have an agreement, the Tsuchikage declared. There's a ravine about a day's hard run from here. With any luck, your target should be hiding out there. And how would you know this? Shikamaru asked him. It was kinda suspicious that he knew the exact location of where Itachi might have been hiding. Because it was always the place the Akatsuki would be whenever I used to hire them, he said shortly. Wait a minute, you used to hire the Akatsuki? Sokka repeated, shocked at what he heard. Why in the name of the spirits would you do something like that? I had my reasons. That's all you need to know, he replied with a slight scowl. You may leave now. I expect to see you out of my village by the end of the day. The team nodded their acknowledgement of the command and turned to leave. He tried to go back to the paperwork in front of him, but when he saw that the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi was staring at one of the photos on the wall, he looked up. I said you could leave. Why are you still? His voice trailed off when he noticed the exact photo he was looking at. Leave us, he ordered the ANBU as he floated out of his chair. They obey, making the rest of the team precede them out of the room, closing the door behind them. All the while, Naruto stared at the photo. It showed the Tsuchikage standing between two shinobi. Judging by the smiles they were wearing, or at least, two of them were smiling, he couldn't tell with the third, they were happy about the Jonin flak jackets the other two were wearing. The one on the right was younger than he remembered, the beard was scruffier and not fully formed, and the ponytail wasn't there, but it was clear to the blonde that he was the Jinchuriki of the Yonbi. You knew him, he said in a whisper when he noticed the Tsuchikage by his side. Had that been any other moment, he would have commented on the fact that he was flying. That I did, the old man said. I knew him as well as any uncle would know his nephew. And him? He asked, looking at the man on the left, who was easily the tallest amongst the three. He wore a red straw hat that would have protected him from rain. He also wore a red uniform that left one arm bare but had the other covered by the sleeve. It also went up to his face, covering the bottom half of it as a mask, just like Kakashi did. He was the son of the knight-aimed Tsuchikage, my sensei, and the Jinchuriki of the Gobi. They were the only 2 students I had ever taken. And you just let them be taken. The blonde didn't raise his voice, but the accusation was there. The old man scowled with a harshness that could only come from the pain of losing someone. Don't you dare accuse me of letting them be taken. I had sent men after Han when I heard he was being attacked by the Akatsuki, and I went myself when I heard the same of Rashi. Both times we were too late. They may have been disliked by the village at the time, and they may have returned it, but they were my students and my family. Then why didn't you do anything about it? The accusation was softer. What could I do? The Akatsuki is an organization shrouded in shadows and secrecy. I never met one of them personally, just sent the mission parameters to a specified dead drop and then sent the reward once I heard the news. I can't just waste resources of both my village and my country to go hunting for them. It just might lead to a war that IWA doesn't need. He floated away, back to his desk. Now leave. Naruto walked over to the door and stopped with his hand on the handle. If it makes you happy, you should know that I plan to kill every one of them, he declared without looking back. And will that give me my students back? The Tsuchikage asked him, staring holes into the back of his head. The silence that filled the room was the answer he needed. Leave, he ordered. The blonde did so. Location unknown. Sasuke came to again with something covering his eyes. When he tried to move, he found something that bound both his feet and his hands. What the fuck is going on? He screamed inside his head as he tried to move around. So you're awake, Sasuke, the voice of his brother made him freeze in place. I had hoped you would. Where are you, Itachi? He demanded, looking around blindly. It was a reflex he couldn't help but do, even if he knew he couldn't see anything. I am here with you. If you're going to kill me, just get it over with. It was probably what was going to happen to him now that he was like this. There was a long pause of silence. Why would I do that? Itachi finally asked. You're my little brother. That innocent-sounding comment set him off. That didn't stop you from killing the rest of our clan. Why should it stop you from killing me? He shouted into the darkness. The only answer he received was his own voice, echoing around him. When the echoes died, he asked a question. Why, Itachi? Why what, Sasuke? Asked Itachi in return. Why did you and your partner kill our clan? And how do you know I had a partner? This time, the question was asked with equal parts amused and curious. I'm not an idiot. Not even you by yourself could kill all of the Uchiha clan. You had to have a partner. Was it Kisame? Very perceptive of you, little brother, he said, praising the blindfolded Sasuke. Indeed, I did have someone help me kill our clan, but it wasn't Kisame. In fact, he does not matter. You still haven't answered my question, Itachi. Why did you murder our clan? And don't tell me that it was to test your abilities. You never once had to do so. Sasuke shouted into the darkness, he could only feel. You were the best of us. The Uchiha everyone in the clan looked up to. Why would you betray us and murder everyone? Again, there was a pause of silence that seemed to loom large to the bounded Uchiha. For what seemed to be the longest time, he didn't hear a response. I did it because I was ordered to, Itachi finally answered. His brother stopped moving, as if the answer had made him freeze. You were ordered to? He repeated slowly, as if he couldn't believe the words he had heard. Yes. I was ordered by the village to kill our clan. That can't be right, the loyal Uchiha thought. It just didn't make any sense to him. Why would the village do something like that? You're lying, he accused Itachi. Our clan was loyal to the village. Why would they do that when we were loyal? Things were not what they seemed at the end, little brother. You were the youngest of the clan. You had no idea what was going on between the clan and the village. What do you mean? He demanded. He was more suspicious now. Are you saying that our clan was going to betray Konoha? That was something he just couldn't believe. Yes. After the Kyuubi's attack on Konoha, the elders began to suspect that there was an Uchiha behind it. Their suspicions eventually led them to separate our clan from the rest of the village, putting them into one small corner of it, he explained. Eventually, the clan began to plan a coup d'état to overthrow the leadership of Konoha as it was. Sasuke was in disbelief over what he had been told. There was a faction in the clan that was planning a coup d'état? Why didn't father stop it then? Itachi sighed. Whether from exasperation, annoyance, or something else, the blindfolded Uchiha couldn't tell. You're not listening, Sasuke, the elder Uchiha said. It wasn't a faction in the clan, it was the entire clan. The reason father didn't stop it is because he was leading it. He wasn't sure what it was, the fact that his brother was so insistent, or the memories of the days before the massacre, when everything just seemed different than normal. But for some reason, it was starting to make sense. That scared him. It terrified him down to his bones. The reason it was so terrifying was because it made him realize that his clan was not what it had seemed to him. Why were they planning to overthrow the Sandaime Hokage? Surely it couldn't just be because of the Kyuubi? They could have just come together and talked it out. You're right. It wasn't just because of the Kyuubi. But I'm afraid that is something you must learn by yourself, his brother told him. It was followed by coughing, something he had never heard of from Itachi. I don't have much time left. Itachi, what's wrong? He asked without thinking. At that moment, he wasn't worried about being bound or blinded. It sounded like his big brother was hurt, and he didn't like it. I'm dying, Sasuke, Itachi said simply. And since a team from Konoha is on their way here, I figured I would spend my moments of life with the last part of the family I have. A team from Konoha is coming? He couldn't help but repeat the words. Why would a Konoha team be on their way? When he heard that, the other Uchiha couldn't help but chuckle. Because I let them know who took you. Sasuke, please listen to me, he all but begged. I will probably be dead by the time the team arrives. But before I die, I want you to understand why I had to kill our clan. All I ask is that if you're going to judge me, you will only do so at the end. Sasuke was silent as he considered this. It seemed like an easy enough request, and yet, he somehow knew if he allowed it, his view of his clan would be changed forever and not necessarily for the better. But if he was going to learn why the village had ordered Itachi to do what he did, it was a chance he was willing to take. Very well then, start talking. Location, Land of Earth. They had left Iwa well before the end of the day. The scent of Sasuke was indeed leading to the ravine that Sachikage had told them about. However, they soon figured out that when he had said a day's hard run, he meant it in the sense of a shinobi running at top speed. As Nyla's fastest speed was significantly lower than that, and they had to keep their pace with him, as he was the one who was doing the tracking, it was going to be a little longer to get to the ravine. As such, when the sun had set, they had lucked out by finding an inn. After making sure the animals of the team were taken care of, they sat down and consumed their dinner. I know we're supposed to be on a time-sensitive mission, but this is some really good chow, Choji declared as he scarfed down what was in front of him. You would be the expert, Choji, Shikamaru told his teammate as he ate his food at a slower pace. Speaking of the mission, how far away are we from that ravine that Sachikage told us about? He asked Kiba and Shino, as they were also looking at a map while they ate. We still got some distance to cover, Kiba answered as he eyed the map with one eye and kept the other one focused on his dinner. Other than that, I really can't say. Come on, Kiba. You have to give something better than that, Ino told him with a slight scowl on her face. Kiba is correct, Shino told her. This map was for a shinobi who was traveling at optimal speed. As we are not traveling at optimal speed and we don't know the land of Earth like a shinobi of Iwa would, we will take longer than we wanted to get there. If that's the case, we might as well enjoy this food while we can, Sokka declared, going for another round of food. While the rest of his team rolled their eyes, it was Azula who said something. Yes, we mustn't keep Sokka away from any kind of food. Otherwise, what good would he be? She asked with enough sarcasm to fill the room. Hey, I'm also the ideal guy, he protested, a piece of meat halfway to his mouth. He turned to look at Naruto, putting the piece of meat into his mouth. When the blonde just kept picking at his food, not saying a word, everyone looked at him. What? He asked, finally noticing all the looks as he lifted his eyes away from the food in front of him. This is usually where you enter the conversation with something funny and or sarcastic, June told him. The fact that he didn't was a little unnerving. Oh, sorry about that, he apologized. I wasn't really paying attention to the conversation. We gathered as much, Shino said to him. Everything okay, Naruto? Asked Kakashi, looking at his former student. Nothing that concerns you, he replied with a bit of a snap in his voice. The masked shinobi didn't look offended by the words, yet the blonde's face fell with a small look of embarrassment. Sorry, that was uncalled for. Then he had a look of confusion. Wait, what am I saying? I don't know, what are you saying? Naruto just scowled at him before standing up from the table. I need a smoke, he announced. He walked out of the inn and over to its side, fishing out a cigarette and the lighter. As he lit the cigarette, he leaned against the wall of the inn. Taking a drag and breathing out the smoke, he relished in the calm it gave him. But the Biju inside him was worried. What was that in there, Naruto? Kyubi asked. 1 minute, you're snapping at Kakashi, the next you're apologizing to him. When we came back, it would have just been snapping. Normally, that would have been the point when Naruto unleashed his sarcasm in full force. But instead, he took another drag. I've got a lot on my plate right now, he answered, blowing smoke. Kit, you've had a lot on your plate since you were born, starting with me. How was what just happened any different? His tone was serious and none of its usual sarcasm or humor. He looked like he was about to actually shout but stopped himself. Can I be honest with you, Kyubi? He asked the fox. Can I be completely, brutally honest with you? When have you not? The Biju asked in response. The blonde didn't say anything in response to that remark. He just started talking. Ever since we left for Kumo, there's been a small voice in my head, telling me what I should or should not do because I was supposedly loyal to Konoha, he explained, letting it out. And over time, it's been getting more insistent. It's been trying to change the way I feel about the village. And the scary thing, it's working on some levels. Why haven't I heard it then? The fox demanded. I live inside of you, Naruto. I should know what's going on inside of your head. I don't know. You never seem to be around when it starts talking. Then again, the two of them hadn't exactly been talking to one another in the past couple of days, aside from the occasional sarcastic quip and the following order to shut up. And you're worried that you may be changing your opinion about the village? The blonde scowled. What do you think? He asked, this time with sarcasm. But it's not just that. While we were at IWA, I saw a photo of the Tsuchikage with the Jinchuriki of the Yambi and the Gobi. Apparently, he had trained them both. He took another drag of his cigarette. I've always wanted to see the other Jinchuriki as family, and yet, I don't know a damn thing about them. That's hardly surprising, Naruto. You're the one who ran away from the elemental countries to the other side of the world. Of course you wouldn't know anything about the rest of the Jinchuriki, aside from Gaara and maybe even Killer Bee. But wasn't that one of the reasons I came back? He asked, talking more to himself than to the Kyubi. To save them from the Akatsuki and see if I could get to know them? He scoffed at himself. Some job I've done with that, he muttered. The fox decided not to comment. You are wrong there, the voice spoke. You did not come back to see if you could be friends with others like you. You came back to ensure that the Akatsuki would become a threat to Konoha. Oh no, not you, not now, he silently groaned, taking the cigarette out of his mouth. I didn't say anything, Kyubi protested. I wasn't talking to you, Fox, he snapped. That other voice is talking? I didn't hear anything. The presence of the fox suddenly felt shunted off to the side, like it was forcibly being quieted. Why you would even believe that you could be friends with other villages' weapons is confusing to say the least. Do you have any sense? You would risk the safety of Konoha with a stunt like that, the voice lectured him as if he was an ignorant student. Maybe I should do that, he retorted. Maybe I should give out the secrets of the village, just to piss you off. The voice chuckled. How could you do that when you have no secrets to give out? It asked in that same cool, collected voice that always infuriated him. Besides, we both know that you would never betray the village like that. Don't bet on it, he snarled. And yet, he knew that he would never do something like that. It just wasn't him. Come on, that's not going to happen. You are loyal to Konoha. Why else would you come back with Lord Jiraiya and listen to his orders? Why else would you be on this mission? It is because you want to save Sasuke and join his team again. You know it's true. That last part sure as hell isn't true. He silently roared at the voice, suddenly angry at the words he had heard. But the voice just felt victorious for some reason. Well, at least you're admitting to parts of the truth. Was it so hard? It disappeared before the blonde could say anything in response, allowing the Kyuubi to come back to the forefront. Hey, what in the name of the sage just happened? The fox demanded with indignation. I can hardly believe you would ignore me like that. I didn't ignore you. You just felt like you had been put off to the side for some reason, he protested. He took another drag of the cigarette. As he blew the smoke out into the night air, he noticed Jiraiya standing by his side. You need something, FS-sensei? Everything okay, Naruto? Asked Jiraiya in return. Yeah, everything is fine, he answered shortly. The Toad Sage frowned. Kid, don't lie to me. Everything is not fine, and I need to know if it's going to be a problem. The blonde fell silent, looking at the cigarette in his fingers. Maybe if I told him, he could help, he thought to himself. He wasn't sure where it would take him, but he was willing to put his faith in his sensei. Would you believe me if I told you there's a voice in my head that's trying to brainwash me? He asked almost quietly. The frown on Jiraiya's face disappeared and was replaced by a serious look. When did it start? He asked with concern. Naruto was honestly surprised by it. You do believe me? I know you, Gaki. Now when did it start? Around the time we left for Kumo, but it actually started speaking after we came back, he answered promptly. Explain, the Toad Sage ordered. He needed greater detail of what was going on. I'm not quite sure, but I think that it had been trying to affect the way I thought somehow. Once we got back to the village, it actually started to talk to me. He looked at Jiraiya. Do you know what's happening to me? Jiraiya was silent for a moment before finally shaking his head. No, I don't, he told the blonde. I've never heard of anything like that, and I've seen a lot of things. Do you think it's a genjutsu or a seal? Naruto shrugged. I'm not sure. Genjutsu shouldn't work on me, and the only seal that I know of on my body is the one keeping the fur ball inside me. He had checked what parts of his body he could, but a potential seal could be in one of the spots he couldn't. Alright then, for now, we do and say nothing about this, Jiraiya ordered. I'll pass a message back to Tsunade and let her know about it. Maybe she'll know something or find something. Once we get back to Konoha, that's when we'll deal with it. I understand. Good. Are you coming back in now? He asked, his face becoming softer and his voice losing some of the edge. I'm pretty sure your food is getting cold. He thought it over for a moment, and then shook his head. I want to finish this. He held the cigarette up. It looked almost done, but there were a couple of drags left in it. Jiraiya didn't say anything, he just turned around and walked away. As Naruto heard the door to the inn opening and then closing, he took a slow drag and breathed the smoke out into the air. Are you sure that was a good idea? The fox asked him. What do you mean? He asked back. In case you've forgotten, Kit, Jiraiya is a Konoha shinobi. A place you have been trying to stay away from for 3 years. I know that, Fox. But it's FS-sensei. Can you think of anyone else who would try to understand what is going through my head right now and try to help as well? While his team would definitely try to help in any way they could, they wouldn't really know how to help. The Kyuubi could see where his Jinchuriki was going, but now since he was aware of the supposed voice, which he was still trying to figure out how it got past him, he had to be sure it was Naruto talking and not the voice through him. So, you'd be willing to go to the super pervert of all people for help? Well, yeah. Now that he thought about it, for the short time that he had been with the Toad Sage, the man had been the closest thing to a parent he had. The fox didn't count. He was more like the uncle you tell very few people, if anyone at all, about. He had kept an eye on Naruto, trained both him and his team, although they qualified it as hell, had given sound advice to them when they needed it, whether they knew it or not, and had just generally been there for him, aside those times when he was either peeping on the fairer sex or sleeping with them. Then let me ask you this question, Naruto. If Jiraiya asked you to come back to Konoha, would you do so? The Biju asked him with a quiet and serious voice. He didn't answer right away. It almost seemed an impossible decision. On the one hand, he still wanted nothing to do with the village, an internal fight that he had begun to believe that he was losing. But on the other hand, Jiraiya had been there for him for the past couple of months, teaching him and helping him. Whenever the Toad Sage suggested something, he had a good reason for it, and it usually turned out for the best. If he suggested the idea of returning to Konoha to the blonde, would it be so bad? I don't know, maybe? Naruto weakly offered. Your cigarette's done, the fox noted, changing the subject. You might as well head back inside and finish off what's left of your dinner. The blonde quietly flicked the stub of the cigarette into the night and back into the inn. As his Jinchuriki walked, the Kyuubi felt a sliver of something in the back of the blonde's head. A feeling of quiet, yet cool and collected smugness, something that felt like it had just won an important victory. But when he tried to look deeper, it disappeared. That must be the voice that's talking to Naruto. He realized before scowling slightly. Whatever you're doing, it's going to stop. I'm onto you and I'm going to make you stop. The kid will make his choice by himself, not by someone else. If the presence had heard him, it didn't show any signs of it. It was quiet, it was quick, and it was slippery. The Kyuubi knew it would have a hard time trying to find where it was hiding inside his Jinchuriki's head, as it kept moving around before shoving him aside to talk to the blonde, but he would find it. When he did, he was going to tear it to pieces. Location unknown. Where do you want me to start? The voice of Sasuke's brother asked him, his words echoing softly all around him. It was a simple question and yet, one which would give him answers he probably didn't want to hear. But nevertheless, he needed to know. Tell me why it was you who had to do it. I was in the perfect position to spy for either side, Itachi answered. As the hostilities and suspicions between the clan and the village elders began to stir and thicken, our father ordered me to spy for the clan, being the only Uchiha in the ANBU. But I couldn't. I knew what would happen in the long run. What do you mean? Think, little brother, he ordered, his tone hard but also quiet. What would have been the outcome if the clan went through with the coup d'état? What would have been the repercussions? He would have asked why, had he not already started thinking it through. The space the two Uchihas were in as the younger looked at all the factors, the causes and the effects, the what-ifs and the could-haves, and all the possibilities. It wouldn't have mattered if the clan had been successful or not, he said after he realized what the eventual outcome would have been. Blood would have been in the water and the sharks would have had the scent. And those sharks would have been who? His brother asked him, quietly urging him on. Other countries that would have wanted to destroy Konoha or take its place. War would have broken out, another shinobi world war. You have never known war, Sasuke. You may have been in battles, but a battle is much different than a war, he explained. I have seen what war is and what it has done to people when I was only a child. It made me never want to see another war again. When our father wanted me to spy on the Hokage, I could see the warnings, even if he could not. So I spied on my clan for the Hokage, for the sake of the village. For the sake of the village, huh? Repeated Sasuke. Since he had become a shinobi of Konoha, he had served the village. He had originally served so he could kill the person he was talking to and bring his clan back. But after Naruto had left, and he had joined the police force part-time, his need to kill Itachi had been put aside. Since he had no clan anymore, and he was in no hurry to commit murder, he had begun to serve the village for the sake of the village. Wasn't all of the clan loyal to Konoha? In a word, yes, his brother answered. But in spirit, they were only loyal to the clan. It was one of the many reasons they were planning to overthrow the Hokage. But wouldn't the Sandaime Hokage have tried to make peace with the clan? He might not have served long enough under the Sandaime Hokage to truly know him, but he did know the man was a man of peace. He did. Despite how many times things looked grim, he kept trying to resolve things peacefully. But his advisors did not think the same way. His voice had the slightest amounts of grimness and sadness. They believed that the Uchiha clan had to be destroyed. And they saw in me the perfect way to do it. And so, they gave you the order to slaughter our clan, leaving me the only survivor, the blinded and bounded Uchiha summarized, albeit with a bit of a bite in his voice. Yes, they did. Why? Why was I the only one who was spared? That was the question he wanted to know the answer to. It was a question that haunted him ever since that night, but it had never been in the forefront of his mind, whether by choice or not was never really a concern. As I had said before, you were the youngest in the clan, So you had no idea what was going on. Thus, you were innocent. Also, the elders wanted a survivor who would be loyal to the village. Those are the reasons of a shinobi who was just doing a mission, he objected instantly. You're my brother and you were the one who was given the mission to kill your family. So why did you spare me, Itachi? It fell silent. To him, it felt like his brother had disappeared from his senses because he didn't want to answer. Because I couldn't kill you, Itachi answered, breaking the silence. You're my little brother, Sasuke. I loved you more than the village, even though I loved the village more than the clan. I originally wanted you to come after and kill me, allowing you to believe that you had avenged the clan. What changed then? He demanded. You did. After we had met when you were searching for Naruto, I snuck back into Konoha and watched. I saw how you interacted with your friends. I saw you worked at the police force, helping where you could and learning everything that came with it. I saw how tirelessly you and your team searched for your missing teammate. I saw how happy you were after you had put aside your hatred for me. And then I found out what you had hidden from everyone. Sasuke froze when he heard those words. Does he mean what I think he means? He asked himself with worry and fear. I've never hidden anything from them, he declared aloud. He heard Itachi chuckle quietly at those words. Foolish little brother, did you think I wouldn't find out about your Mangekyo Sharingan? I had hoped to keep it a secret, since I never planned to use it, he admitted after a moment of silence. He had planned to take the secrets and the dangers of the Mangekyo Sharingan with him to the grave. An admirable idea, but you must realize that there will probably come a day when you may have to use the Mangekyo Sharingan to protect what you hold dear. Do you mean like Danzo and the other elders? If he begins to not fit their idea of a loyal shinobi, they may come after him. If they did, they might also come after the others as well, just to make him cooperate. I doubt that will be possible, as they're already dead by my hands, his brother stated with a cool tone. If Saki was honest, he wasn't surprised by that statement. You killed them when you kidnapped me, didn't you? Yes, I did. It was spoken with that same cool tone, not betraying any sort of emotion that the elder Uchiha might have at that moment. It was something I took some amount of satisfaction in. He must have seen the puzzled look on his brother's face, as he explained. When the elders had given me the order, I had thought that they were speaking with the Hokage's voice. But after the massacre, when I went to the Hokage to plead for your life, he was surprised by what I had done. As it turned out, despite his numerous attempts to settle things peacefully, the elders went behind his back and gave me that order. In response, after promising me that you would be safe from Danzo and the other two elders, he gave me a mission. When I felt the time was right, I was to kill the three elders. After he had heard all of what had happened to his clan, Sasuke felt some satisfaction at those words. Our clan was avenged in the end, he declared. That may be. But the question I have for you is, what will you do now? Location: Land of Earth. They had been moving fast ever since they left the inn, following the scent. No one said a word, but most of them were wondering what had happened with Naruto at the inn. Jiraiya had gone after him, but when he came back he didn't say anything, and neither did the blonde. Whatever they had talked about, they kept to themselves and probably weren't going to tell anyone else. We're here, June declared as she reined Nyla in. They all stood on the edge of the ravine that Tsuchikage had directed them to. There was a small stream flowing through it, splitting the land into half. There was small vegetation along the bank of the stream, but the rest of the ravine was rock and dirt. Sasuke's scent goes down there. We'll take the lead from here, Kakashi told her as he and Kiba walked up beside her. We don't know if Itachi or the Akatsuki laid any traps to ward off any unexpected visitors. You and your team will stay here while we see if there are any traps. I'll go with them, Jiraiya told them. They had no objections and just watched as the shinobi of the team went down into the ravine and began to look carefully around for anything that might be a trap. Is something the matter, Naruto? Suki asked the blonde when she noticed that he was glaring half-heartedly at the Toad Sage's back. When he didn't say anything, she got his attention by waving one of her fans in front of his face. Huh? What? He asked in surprise, blinking rapidly. He sounded like he had just come out of a trance. Is something the matter? She repeated. The rest of the team was now looking at him as well. It's nothing, just something I've been wrestling with for the past couple of days. It was odd how he spoke those words. He made it sound like he didn't want to talk about it, and yet, like he wanted to get it out. Naruto, you can tell us. Sokka told him. We're friends, aren't we? Considering you had to bust me out of prison, I'd say so, he fired back easily enough with sarcasm lightly covering the words. And that's a point to him, June stated with a smirk. But even though that was usually when the grins and laughs came around, Naruto stayed silent. Come on, start talking, Naruto, she ordered him. If you don't, I'll sick Nyla on you. He looked at her, and then at the Shirshu. Nyla seemed to agree with what the bounty hunter had said, as he had hissed at the blonde and showed the tip of his tongue, making it obvious that he was ready to use it. Alright, fine. Have any of you guys noticed how FS-sensei keeps talking like he's coming back with us once all this is over? Now that they had thought about it, in the past few days, Jiraiya had been using the word we instead of you whenever they had talked about the other side of the planet. They hadn't really realized it until now. You think that he's planning to come back with us? Azula asked him. That wouldn't be so bad, Sokka said before thinking it over. Well, aside from his perverted side, that is. He could still remember the time they had to go hunting for Jiraiya whenever he found someone, and he could still feel the bruises for when they found out someone had a boyfriend, fiancé, or husband, which meant they had to make a very quick getaway. But he's a shinobi of Konoha and a very famous one at that. He can't just do that, Naruto immediately pointed out. To do something like that would be tantamount to treason. And he really didn't want his sensei to be a traitor. Didn't he wander around the elemental countries when he was younger? Suki asked, vaguely remembering the Toad Sage telling her that at one point. She wasn't sure when that was. It was either in Ba Sing Se or at Ember Island. He was still loyal to Konoha, right? That's different. He was on the same continent, he could pass vital information back to the village, and he came back frequently. So what's stopping him from doing that over on our side of the planet? June asked. When they all looked at her, she realized what she had just said. I was talking about the coming back thing, not the information passing thing. He's a shinobi from Konoha. He belongs there, the blonde said adamantly. But Naruto, I would have thought that you out of all of us would have wanted him to come with us the most, Azula noted. Out of the entire team, as well as Team Avatar, he and Jiraiya got along the best. It was obvious just by looking at how they interacted with each other. Well, I do, but he groped for the right words to say, but just couldn't find them. In that unguarded moment of vulnerability, he said something he wouldn't have said otherwise. Arg, maybe it would be better if I became a Konoha shinobi again. Everyone there, including him, froze when those words were said. In his head, the Kyuubi noticed that same cool and collected feeling. There you are. The fox declared, moving his chakra towards the feeling. But as quick as it had shown itself, it had disappeared. The Biju stifled a growl. It was going to be a long hunt. Meanwhile, everyone else was still looking at the blonde. Did I really just say that? He asked aloud, looking confused. When he saw Azula nod in confirmation, he shook his head like he was trying to rattle an answer out of his brain. I didn't mean it. I swear to Kami, I didn't mean it, he promised them. We know you didn't, Naruto, Azula assured him. You're just confused about what to do with Jiraiya, that's all. He gave a semi-relieved look. Yeah, that's all, he agreed. But he knew that voice had something to do with what he said. If it kept up, he may actually decide to rejoin Konoha of his own free will. That was when the sound of a whistle being blown rang through the ravine. That must be the all clear, June commented as the whistle faded. I guess we can go down and join them now. As she was readying Nyla to move, she looked back and saw that Naruto was already gone. What the? The others looked just as confused as she was when they noticed the blonde was already gone. Get a move on, people! They heard him shout from the base of the ravine. He had already moved at the whistle. Location unknown. What do you mean by that? Sasuke asked, again looking around even though he was blinded by something. Exactly what I mean, Sasuke, Itachi replied from the darkness that surrounded him. Now that you know what happened to our clan and why it happened, what will you do? He could tell that it was a loaded question, and he should have answered carefully. But to him, the answer was obvious. What would you have me do, Itachi? Try to betray the village and destroy it? I made the mistake of doing the first one and looked at what I got in return. The loss of a friend and an evolution of my eyes that comes with too many risks, he declared with a snap of his voice. I told you before, killing you won't bring back our clan. It's the same for the village. Making it a ruined wasteland won't miraculously revive our family. And so you would serve the village that caused the death of your entire clan? When he heard that question, Sasuke just knew that there was a smirk on his brother's face somehow. You serve the village just as I do, Itachi. We just served in different ways. I understand why you decided to protect the village. I will do the same. I will protect Konoha until my dying day, he swore. The quietest laugh one would ever have heard was his response. There's no need to go that far, Itachi told him. I would think you'd want a family at some point. But how will you serve Konoha? Will it be like the Hokage? He snorted in derision. I would never make that far, and I don't want to be a Hokage either. Konohamaru is the one who wants to be Hokage. If he has what it takes, which I think he does, I'll stand by his side as the leader of the Konoha military police force. Who is Konohamaru? It was a question filled with curiosity. It made Itachi sound like he didn't know who his brother was talking about, which Sasuke would realize that he didn't. He's the grandson of the Sandaime Hokage. He wanted to be Hokage after Naruto was done. Now, he's training hard to take on the mantle from Lady Tsunade. And every day, slowly but surely, he was proving his worth. I can see you've made your choice, Sasuke, his brother said. It was followed by a loud hacking cough. The sounds of Itachi coughing filled the air and made Sasuke both nervous and scared. As I have made mine. The sounds of someone standing up and moving away filled the darkness. I hope you will be grateful. What did you do? He demanded, and yet all that answered him was the sounds of Itachi moving. Itachi, what did you do? The sounds of moving stopped, making the darkness go silent. You know that if you use the Mangekyo Sharingan, you will have power enough to tame the Kyuubi, but eventually you'll go blind. You've said that it's too much of a risk and refused to use it. But you weren't aware of this. The blindness of the Mangekyo Sharingan can be stopped and cured by having another pair transplanted into the recipient. It's best done between siblings. He immediately understood what that meant. I have your eyes? He asked in horror. That you do. I hope that you will see this as the last good thing I ever did for you. The sounds of feet moving began again. This will be the last time we talk, Sasuke. I only ask you to do one thing. Never let the truth of the massacre become known to the village. Let them be remembered as a clan that was loyal to the village and protected it. I want you to find someone who loves you for you and you love her in return. I want you to have that family I took from you. There was a brief silence before he spoke again. Goodbye. The sounds of Itachi moving began to fade away. Itachi? Sasuke called out to the sounds. Itachi, come back. Come back here. You come back here right now, Itachi! He demanded. But as the darkness went silent, he started begging. Please come back. Don't leave me alone. Come back. Aniki! No answer came back to him. He started to struggle wildly against his restraints, trying to break free. But whatever bounded his limbs was well done, for no matter what he did, he could not get loose. But that didn't stop him. He kept on trying, often collapsing into sleep. He did not know how long his periods of tired sleep lasted, but every time he awoke, he kept trying to break free, often calling for Itachi to come back. He wasn't sure how long he was there. He didn't even want to remember. He just wanted to be free. He wanted to be free of the binds holding him down. He wanted to be free of the darkness. Most of all, he wanted to go home. That was why he kept trying to break free. So he could leave this nightmarish place and go back to Konoha. It was that thought, as well as the image of a pink-haired green-eyed shinobi, that kept him going. He didn't know how many times he had fallen unconscious by the time he heard a different noise fill the darkness. The only noise that had been made was by him as he tried to free himself again and again. This was a new noise, the sound of something being smashed through. Hello? He called out. Is anyone there? Is that you, Sasuke? A faint voice called out in return. It sounded far away, but it filled him with hope. I'm here, he shouted. Can you hear me? I'm right here. He hoped and prayed that whoever was there would be friendly. The sounds of feet running filled the darkness, giving him hope. When they stopped and the voice the feet belonged to spoke, he was surprised. Sheesh, we ran all this way to rescue and here you are, just lying there. Had we known that, we could have taken our time. He heard the sound of a kunai being drawn. Just give me a minute. Is that you, Naruto? he asked, not sure if it was or not. I'm not dreaming, am I? You're actually here? He felt the binds holding his limbs go slack, which allowed his hands and feet to go limp. Wanting to see if he could still move, he tried lifting his right arm. While he did succeed in raising it into the air, it soon felt heavy and started to drop. But then another hand grabbed it and took a firm hold on it. Yeah, I'm here, Theme, Naruto told him as he pulled him up. I'm here. The hospital room was silent as the two people quietly watched the patient sleeping. The other teams had come by to see how Sasuke had been doing. But since the majority of the teams had been on the mission to get him, and the fact they could see the looks on Naruto's and Sakura's faces as they watched in silence, they had decided to leave. Shikamaru and Kiba had to drag Lee out of the room, while Sai only watched from afar. How's he doing? Naruto finally asked Sakura from where he leaned against the wall next to the door. Ever since the teams had left, the silence between the two of them was awkward to say the least. Until now, either of them knew what to say, or even speak. He decided to be the one to break the silence by asking a simple question. He's doing fine, she replied, being all business. Heart rate is normal, and so is his temperature. All in all, he looks like he'll be waking up soon. That's good to know, I guess, he said, muttering that last part to himself. It was probably something that she didn't need to hear at this moment. It probably would end with him either being sent through the window or the wall. Either way, pain would have definitely followed. The one thing that concerns me is the bandages around his eyes when he was brought in. She frowned slightly. I've checked the chakra that's centered in his eyes and the eyes themselves to see if anything was damaged. I've found nothing, and yet, I can't help but feel concerned. She looked over at the blonde. Did he tell anyone in the teams there what they were for? He shook his head. He was mostly asleep when we came back. And when he was awake, he didn't ask to have it taken off, so we just left it on. It might have been a little inconsiderate, but they had been more focused on getting back to Konoha. At least, that Tsuchikage was considerate enough to give directions to the place where Itachi may have taken his brother. She heaved a somewhat irritable sigh. I guess I'll just have to ask him when he wakes up. He rolled his eyes. That is if he decides to tell you what happened, he said, mostly to himself. But Sakura heard him. And what exactly is that supposed to mean? She asked, looking him straight in the eye. Her voice was both questioning and hard. It was a voice that demanded a swift and good answer. Unable to look her in the eyes, he turned his head to look out the nearby window. I'm just saying that he might not tell you. Everyone has their secrets, and some of those secrets they don't want to let anyone else know about. He knew that all too well. She accepted his reasoning with a small nod of acknowledgement before turning back to face the Uchiha in the bed. Silence came to the room again, but this time it was a little less awkward. Have I said thank you yet? Said thank you for what? For bringing him back, she clarified, gesturing at the comatose Uchiha. When she saw him being carried into the village on the blonde's back, having already been cleared by the hospital soon after the retrieval team had left, she almost lost control and cried tears of relief. Instead, she told Naruto to take him straight to the hospital. From there, it was all business, making sure Sasuke was okay. You didn't need to. It was a mission, nothing more and nothing less. It was obvious to both of them that he didn't want to keep talking about it. Of course it was, she agreed. And yet, she had already heard about how it was he who found Sasuke first. How, on the way back, he was the one to carry the Uchiha and always kept a close eye on him when they had stopped for the night. She kept it to herself, but when she saw those two come past the gates of the village, she had a small hope that it would be a step to the three of them mending their relationship. A small groan filled their ears. Sasuke stirred slightly, rustling the sheets just as slightly. He cracked open an eyeball, wincing at the light, and saw a familiar pink-haired shinobi filling his vision. I guess I'm home, he said with a whisper. Naruto didn't say anything, but Sakura did. Yes, you're home, Sasuke, she told him, relief filling her voice. You should know better than to scare me like that nowadays. He weakly rolled his eyes. And I thought that you would have gotten used to stuff like this, he replied, his voice getting stronger. We are shinobi after all. Just because we're shinobi doesn't mean you get to make me worry like that, she reprimanded the Uchiha as he sat up. We're teammates and friends, Sasuke. If something happened to you while I wasn't there, how do you think I would take it? I wouldn't be able to live with myself. She backed a little, fearing that she had said too much. But as he listened to her and looked at her, Itachi's words came back to him. I want you to find someone who loves you for you and you love her in return, they whispered in his ear. Without warning, he reached out and pulled Sakura into a kiss. It was a safe bet that 2 of the 3 people in the room were not expecting that to happen. However, Sakura's shocked expression soon disappeared, and although it was replaced by small confusion, she returned the kiss. Naruto, on the other hand, still had his shocked expression, and could only look away as they kept kissing. All of a sudden, he felt like an intruder, and yet, he somehow couldn't find it in him to walk away. As the kiss ended, Sakura drew back, the confusion showing fully on her face. Sasuke, what? She asked, unable to fully ask the question she had. He didn't say anything at first. He just pulled her into a hug. I love you, Sakura Haruno, he said into her ear, using her full name and making her blush. It took me some time to realize it, but I love you. It was a short and simple thing to say, but he didn't know any way else to put it. When she heard those words, Sakura couldn't believe it. Ever since she had first seen the Uchiha, she had a crush on him. And she had let that crush turn her into a fangirl for quite some time. All she wanted was to have Sasuke notice her. She had even broken her friendship with Ino so she could get it, even though they had mended their bond and became friends again. And even though Tsunade had completely obliterated the fangirl she was, she still felt something for Sasuke. And now, he was telling her that he loved her. When did this happen? She asked. She had to be sure he didn't just spontaneously say that. I think it was when I first noticed that you weren't a fangirl anymore, but a shinobi, he admitted. When they had originally been put together, he had no doubts that she was a fangirl and therefore, completely useless. And even though she had proven to both him and Naruto that she had strength, she was still pretty much a fangirl. But that had all changed when he rejoined the ranks. When he had met up with her and Kakashi, she greeted him as a friend and not squealing his name excitedly. She didn't hold back in the spar, and when she stood over him in victory, instead of telling him that she was sorry to hit him like that, she just smiled and told him, better luck next time. As she walked away, he realized that she was an actual shinobi now, not a useless fangirl. The last thought his dazed mind had before Kakashi got him back on his feet was something along the lines of what a woman. She blushed somewhat at those words. She remembered that day as well and what came afterwards. After he had rejoined the ranks, she had treated Sasuke as a friend, and he had done the same to her. But as time went on, she began to feel different about Sasuke. It was a familiar feeling, which was why she never said anything. She feared that it was her old crush on him acting up again. But she soon realized that it wasn't a crush, but genuine love. Still, she didn't say anything in fear of being rejected again. And now, he told her that he loved her, and she could tell that he meant it. I love you too, Sasuke, she whispered in his ear, returning the hug. I guess it took me some time to admit it too. I'm glad to hear that, he replied as he pulled away, giving her a gentle smile. She gave him the same smile and they hugged each other once again. Naruto, having watched all of this, now really felt like an intruder. It's time to leave. He turned away from the 2 and headed towards the door. Naruto, Sasuke called out, making the blonde stop. He stayed like that, with his back to the 2 of them. Don't look back. Don't look back. Don't look back, he chanted to himself inside his head. But as the silence dragged on, he couldn't help himself. He turned his head slightly to the side, enough so one eye could just look upon the new couple. Thank you, the Uchiha told him with a smile that Sakura shared. The 2 of them seemed to be more intimate now than before. He didn't know why he did what he did. Maybe it was because of the happiness that now was radiating off the 2 of them. Maybe it was because he had played an indirect hand in it. Or maybe it was because it made him feel something he didn't want to. But no matter what it was, it made him want to get away. For the second time in a few days, he bolted out of the room and of the hospital. Both Jiraiya and Kakashi stood in the middle of the council room. The clan heads and Tsunade sat around them, except for Sasuke. The civilian council had not been summoned. The situation didn't deal with a civilian. It was not a formal meeting, as one could tell how they lounged in their chairs, or at least, sat casually. So Itachi is finally dead? Some asked. We found him in an adjacent room to Sasuke. He had no pulse and he looked like he had died from a disease, Kakashi answered. He found the body. He held a few pieces of paper in his hand, which I extracted from his death grip. I take it that the body was destroyed? Hayashi asked. It was a standard procedure to do so, but it was always a good idea to ask the question. Jiraiya nodded. Once we had gotten Sasuke out, we burned the body and collapsed the entire cave. Unless someone wants to dig through a lot of rubble, they're not going to get anything. And even if they did, it's highly unlikely that anything had survived, he declared. That is good to know, the Hyuga clan head acknowledged. Do you still have the papers with you? Inoichi asked them. If there was information on the thing that was vital, they needed to know what it was. The Toad Sage shook his head in the negative. Once Kakashi and I read its contents, we burned it to ash. We felt that the information on it was too sensitive to be on paper, that it was safer to have it as word of mouth. Well, what was on it then? Choza asked the two of them. It revealed why Itachi had killed the elders. After the Uchiha clan massacre, the Sandaime had given him a mission to kill them. Apparently, they had gone behind Sandaime's back and gave him that order because the Uchiha clan were planning a coup d'état and they thought the clan had to be destroyed, he explained. He also believed that Danzo influenced him into making that choice. And so, Sandaime ordered him to kill them when he felt the time was right. After receiving that order, he decided to join the Akatsuki in order to pass the information he found to the village, Kakashi told them. As they listened to what he said, some eyes widened in surprise. They remembered how the situation was before the massacre. How tense relations between the Uchiha clan and the rest of the village had been. But they had no idea it might have gone to such lengths. Kami, some of them had believed things were looking up when the massacre happened. As he regained his composure, despite not letting it show on his face, Hayashi frowned. Could you please explain something to us, Kakashi? He asked. I remember Itachi being a person who would not have been easily convinced to murder his own clan. Who would have been so convincing to make him do something like that? Shisui Uchiha, Jiraiya said, getting everyone's attention. Or to be more precise, Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan was so convincing. Explain, Jiraiya, Tsunade ordered her teammate. There isn't much. But from what little Itachi wrote down for us, Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan had a unique ability called Kodo Amatsukami. In essence, it would allow the user to cast a genjutsu on someone so subtle, they would believe that they were making their own choices. And how would this factor into Itachi believing he had been manipulated? Shibi asked. That was the question that was on everyone's minds at that moment. Because, according to what Itachi wrote, Danzo had stolen Shisui's right eye and implanted it into his own socket, Kakashi answered. Itachi was unaware of that fact until Shisui had told him. He had met with Danzo before that meeting. That is why he believed the Kodo Amatsukami had been casted on him. The answer astounded everyone. All of a sudden, the reason why Danzo had kept the right side of his face bandaged made sense. He had been hiding a Sharingan in his eye socket. If it had been found out, he would have been charged with treason and executed within the week. What happened to Shisui's left eye? Shikaka asked, realizing that Kakashi had only spoken of the right one. He gave it to Itachi before killing himself, Jiraiya answered the question. And before Itachi died, he destroyed it. Is the other eye still in Danzo? He asked Tsunade. She shook her head. We don't know how he did it, but Itachi escaped notice of the camera when he went back to Danzo's body a second time. He destroyed the right eye and for some reason, Danzo's right arm as well. Why would he do something like that? Itachi was never someone who did things without a reason, even if he never shared those reasons with anyone else. Whatever the reason, we won't know now, Hayashi said. The Hyuga clan head was actually glad for that. Whatever Itachi's reason was, it had to deal with what Danzo had done. Quite frankly, he didn't want to know any more of that man's secrets. Kami take you, Itachi, the Toad Sage swore. You had to have died now of all times. What do you mean by that, Lord Jiraiya? Inoichi asked him. The two sages in the room shared a look. Tsunade gave him a nod of approval. He looked around the room before taking a deep breath. While we were on the hunt for Sasuke and Itachi, Naruto confided in me one night. He told me that he believed that there was a voice in his head that was trying to make him loyal to Konoha. After reading what Itachi had written, I now believe that Danzo used the Kodo Amatsukami on Naruto at some point. If they had been surprised by what they had learned before, now they were shocked. Even Kakashi was caught off guard, as he had not been told about that until now. Are you absolutely sure about this, Lord Jiraiya? Shibi asked him. Of course I'm sure, he retorted. When he had learned the truth and connected the dots, he was furious. Danzo had been trying to brainwash his student, and was now trying to do it from beyond the grave. If he had been alive, he would be a dead man. And how did Naruto become aware of this? Choza inquired. From what he told me, it first appeared before we had left for Kumo, trying to subtly change what he thought and said. However, when we had returned, it started to actually speak to him. Why the change in tactics? Asked Hayashi. Sim snorted when she heard that. We're talking about Naruto Uzumaki here, probably the most stubborn person ever to have come out of this village, she declared. Don't you all remember that one time he kept waging a war against our dogs? They did. Although the rest of them weren't sure of the reason, when he was about 7, Naruto had waged a pranking war against the Inuzuka hounds. Even though several people told him that he was being stupid, that he should stop and leave the dogs alone, he didn't. Even when shinobi of the Inuzuka clan went after him for pranking their partners, he still kept his war going. It was only after both Sum and the Sandaime Hokage talked to him that he finally stopped. Shibi understood her reasoning. If Naruto was indeed being stubborn as usual, the change in tactics would be understandable. He was refusing the subtle attempts, so it is going with the obvious ones. He noted. Whatever it is, it must be working, Jiraiya said. Before this mission, Naruto wouldn't have cared if Sasuke had been kidnapped. But during the entire mission, he had been up at the front of the run every day and almost seemed to be unconsciously impatient every time we finally stopped. He frowned slightly. Unfortunately, Itachi didn't leave us a way to break this particular genjutsu. What about the usual methods? Choza suggested. They were always useful for getting a shinobi out of the influence of a genjutsu. He shook his head. I tried disrupting his chakra on the way back without his notice, he answered. He kept on acting the same, always the one to carry Sasuke and keeping an eye on him as we rested for the night. And I'm guessing pain didn't work either? If it did, then the genjutsu should have been broken when he and Killer Bee had been ambushed at Onreikyo, he replied, still having that feeling of failure and disappointment rake over him for not getting there in time. What if I were to take a look inside his mind? Inoichi asked. I will probably be able to find it, and help him get rid of it. I don't know if that would work or not, the Toad Sage told him. This is a genjutsu of the highest level. And no offense to you, Inoichi, but there's probably a good chance that it'll be able to avoid your probes to find it. Plus, we don't know if the Kyuubi will even let you do that much at all. They all sat in silence for a moment before Shikaku spoke. What a drag this is going to be, he muttered to himself before clearing his voice and getting everyone's attention. Look, I know we all have the same question on our mind about this, but none of us really want to say it. So I'm going to be the asshole in the room and ask, should we even try to stop what this Kodoama Tsukumi is doing to Naruto? While everyone did look at him, Tsunade and Jiraiya were the only ones who gave him half-hearted glares. They knew he didn't approve of the idea. If Naruto does decide to come back, it should be by his own decision, Jiraiya said to him. I may be his sensei, but I will not force him to come back. That is his choice, no one else's. Which Danzo tried to make for him, Tsunade finished what he said. And I'm open to ideas that would break the genjutsu. Does anyone have one? They all began to throw out suggestions. At that point, it was more of a mass-sounding board than any actual ideas. Seeing as you don't really require me anymore, may I take my leave, Lady Tsunade? Kakashi asked. A brief wave of her hand was his answer. He walked out into the corridor in silence. When he was a good distance away from the room, and the voices inside it, he exhaled a small breath of relief. If anyone who didn't know him, and even most of the people who knew him, saw him at that moment, they would have thought nothing was wrong. But it wasn't. He had been carrying a secret ever since they found Itachi. In truth, there was another piece of paper in Itachi's hand. A smaller one addressed to him, and encrypted in an ANBU code he knew. Once he had read it, he had immediately burned it. But the words still echoed inside his mind. Kakashi. I know you would be sent to find Sasuke. He is your student, it's only natural that the Hokage would send you, and I suspect, either his teammate or Naruto. The information I am going to pass to you is something I had risked my position in the Akatsuki and my life to obtain. As I am sure you are already aware, the masked shinobi amongst has claimed to be Madara Uchiha. I do not know if you believe him, but let me assure you, he is not. As I am unsure if this will find you first or will be found by someone else who knows this cipher, I cannot risk passing the information to you directly. Therefore, please understand what I am about to say. 2 Uchiha eyes traveled to the Canopy Bridge, but only one saw it destroyed. One eye slayed someone dearest and the other eye saw it too. Now one eye serves the leaf and the other wishes to see it disappear. I hope you know what this means. Please watch over my little brother for me. Itachi Uchiha. Of course, he had been stunned by what the letter had told him. He had figured out what Itachi had meant, and yet, he almost wished that he hadn't. For it had told him that what he had thought all these years had been wrong. He almost wanted to disbelieve it, but he couldn't. Itachi had written himself that he had risked everything to uncover the masked shinobi that he knew as Tobi. I guess I shouldn't call him that anymore, he thought almost bitterly. He also knew that he should inform Tsunade of this. But he wasn't sure how to do it, especially with the concern she had at the moment. Hello there, Kakashi, Shizen greeted him as they passed each other in the hallway, Tantan in her arms. Hello, Shizen, he replied in turn. Are you going to help out Lady Tsunade? I'm going to see if she's working or if she's drinking, she said with a small laugh. If it's the latter, I'll be forced to sick Tantan on her. The pig in question agreed with an oink. Don't worry, she's working hard, he assured her. Tales of how Tantan kept Tsunade working instead of drinking were well known in the village, although never within earshot of the Hokage, so he could believe what she said. Actually, she's in a meeting with the clan heads in Jiraiya. They might need some sake soon. It would certainly help the idea-throwing part. She narrowed her gaze. Is that true, or is she trying to make a break for it again? It's the truth, I swear. If you say so, she replied, still suspicious. I guess I can bring in some sake. I just hope they don't go overboard with it. I'll see you around, Kakashi. He gave a small wave of his hand to say goodbye as he started walking again. While he didn't mind being around other people, he needed peace and quiet. He was still coping with the fact that the masked shinobi in the Akatsuki who called himself Tobi was in fact his old teammate who long thought dead, Obito Uchiha. After running from the hospital and all the way back to the house, Naruto had stripped himself of his clothes and stepped into the shower. As the hot water poured on him, he struggled to understand what was going on with everything that he considered important. I know the voice is trying to convince me to come back to the village, he thought to himself as he bent his head under the stream of water. But is it really someone just trying to tamper with me? What else would it be, Gaki? Kyuubi asked him, trying to help him figure it all out. I don't know, he answered aloud. Maybe it's a part of me that wants to come back. Bullshit, complete and utter bullshit, the fox declared. I remember quite clearly that you had no qualms about running away. And let's not forget how you kept trying to make the Konoha teams leave you alone while they were with the Avatar. This is in no way, shape or form, any part of you. Someone is tampering with you. If that's true, it's still not tampering with some things, he pointed out. I came back to stop the Akatsuki and save the other Jinchuriki in the hopes of making them a part of my family. Now I'm the last of them and I don't seem to be getting anywhere with the whole stopping part. And there's this whole thing with Sasuke and Sakura. I couldn't have given a rat's ass about them. But when he was kidnapped, and we found him, I was relieved. I called him Team Kyuubi. I haven't done that since I left. And there's what just happened in the hospital. Yeah, there's that, the blonde agreed. Thinking back on it, when he had seen the two of them together, it gave him the sense that he didn't belong there in that room. But it also showed him again that things weren't the same. First it was Sakura telling him to bring Sasuke back. Now, it was the fact that the two of them were telling each other that they loved each other instead of Sakura going after Sasuke and Sasuke ignoring her. What caused you to run from the fact that they looked happy in each other's arms? Or was it the fact that Sasuke thanked you for it? The Biju inside of him asked. I'm not sure. Maybe it was both or just one of them. It feels like I should care about them and yet I don't. He turned the water off and stood there as it stopped. I don't think I've ever felt so alone, he said as he stepped out of the shower, reaching for a towel. What the hell am I, an amusing stuffed animal? The fox sounded a little annoyed, but the blonde wasn't really paying attention to his tone of voice. That's not what I meant. Aside from you, I don't think I have anyone I can really talk to. And what do you call Team Paragon or Team Avatar? You told them about me. Not to mention Azula. You're her boyfriend, right? I know that, furball. But there's a difference between telling them you have a biju sealed inside of you and trying to tell them that I'm having second thoughts about the village, and it may or may not be of my own violation, he defended himself as he began to towel off. So who do you think you would be able to talk to if you can't talk to them? I'm assuming that the super pervert is out too. Yeah, he is. The blonde paused for a moment, as a thought crossed his mind. Maybe I could have talked to my parents about this. Kyubi raised an eyebrow when he heard this. He had never heard his Jinchuriki say anything like that before. He never really spoke about his parents at all. Why are you suddenly wondering about your parents? You've hardly bothered to even think about them. Trust me, I've checked. Number 1. Talk about an invasion of privacy, Naruto commented. Gaki, I've been sealed inside of you since you were just born. Privacy went out the window a long time ago. Number 2. Wouldn't this be something to talk about with a parent? He asked, ignoring the fox's sarcastic comment. You would be asking the wrong creature. It was true. The only person the fox could technically call a parent had been dead for a long time, and who he had to share with 8 other siblings. I should have figured, the blonde muttered to himself as he finished toweling off. I wonder what it would be like to have parents. Hell, to have any kind of family. The biju frowned when he heard that innocent-sounding comment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you have a family. You know Saka, Suki, Zuko, Jun, Katara, Azula, those people? I'm talking about a real family here, foxes. You know, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles? I don't have that. I just have friends, he finished. Why do you think I feel alone? There are just some things that friends can help you with. Ah, I see, the fox said. Thankfully, I know a way to correct this little problem of yours and this faulty thinking, which I believe is the voice acting up again. What do you mean? He asked, walking over to the mirror. It had steamed over while he had been in the shower. The Kyubi stayed silent as his Jinchuriki reached out to wipe away the steam on the mirror, only to whip it back with a strangled shout and a curse. In the mirror was not only his face, but those of his parents. That's what I mean, Biju answered. Now, if you would kindly turn around. Naruto did as he was told, not really thinking, just reacting. What he saw surprised him again was the fact that both of his parents were actually standing in front of him. He blinked to make sure he wasn't seeing things. But when he opened the eyes again, they were still there. The only difference was that they were now in a white void and he was wearing actual clothes. That didn't concern him as much as the 2 supposed to be dead people in front of him. Hello, Naruto, Minato greeted him with a smile. Are you really here? He asked, almost hesitantly. There was a somewhat look of wonder on his face as he examined the 2 of them. Of course we are. It looked like you needed some help, so the fox, whatever Kushina was going to finish with, it was interrupted when the look of wonder on her son's face disappeared and was replaced with a look of anger and rage. Without warning or prompting, he stepped right up to his father and drove his fist into his face hard. What the fuck is wrong with you? Bellowed the younger blonde as the older one fell to the ground. Why would you ever seal the Kyubi into your son, your own flesh and blood, and then just die? He whipped his head to look at his mother. The same goes for you. Do either of you have any idea of the hell I went through because of what you did? The beatings, the dirty looks no one thought I saw, how I was kept being told how worthless I was by everyone. Do you have any idea? The words that spewed forth from his mouth echoed around them. Even as Minato stood back up, neither he nor Kushina said anything. They waited as Naruto's ragged breathing from the shouting slowly calmed down and went back to normal. Finally, it was Kushina who spoke, breaking the silence. I guess there is a heart in there somewhere, she remarked with a grin. And here I was worried that my son wouldn't have one. Why are you 2 here? He demanded. Where in the name of Kami is here anyway? He looked around and saw only white nothingness. As I was trying to say before you so rudely interrupted me, the Kyubi summoned us to talk to you and help you, she answered. As for where we are inside a part of your mind, his father told him, finishing the explanation. She looked around for a couple of seconds. It's a little bleak and depressing, she remarked as she turned her gaze back to her son with a smirk and a shadow of laughter in her eyes. You might want to consider calling a fashion designer to spruce up the place. How the hell did the furball summon you too? He asked, ignoring her comment. You're supposed to be dead. I found their chuckers in the seal after you lost control during the war. The voice of the QB answered the question, echoing all around them. Believe me, it was as much of a surprise for me as it is for you. He had been examining the seal itself, and was thunderstruck when he had found their chuckers in it. And now, we're here to help, Minato repeated what had been said before. Help with what? His son asked shortly. You're the one who wanted to talk to us about what's happening to you, the Yondaime Hokage pointed out mildly. When he heard those words, the annoyed look on Naruto's face disappeared and was replaced with one of unease. I thought it would have been wishful thinking, not actually happening. You're welcome, the voice of the fox spoke again, causing the younger blonde to look up, or at least what qualified as up in the void. He wasn't even sure if they were floating or standing, and scowled. Well, we're still here, Kushina commented. So we might as well get talking, you know. When both husband and son looked at her, her cheeks lit up in embarrassment. Oh, damn it. I was hoping that wouldn't come out. Come on, Kushina. You know I find it cute, Minato said with a smile. He did enjoy hearing his wife utter her verbal tick. She just turned on him and gave him a scowl. Our son doesn't need to hear things like that from his parents, you big dork. She admonished him. The smile he had on his face turned into a goofy grin as she admonished him. Wow. That sounds incredibly familiar. I think you used to say something similar, Kit, the Biju commented, enjoying himself a little too much if the voice was anything to go by. What was it you used to say? Believe. I swear to Kami, Furball, if you keep talking, I will hunt you down wherever you are hiding and skin you, screamed the now flustered fire paragon into the void. It was bad enough that the fox kept coming into the conversation, but he kept doing it when he wasn't needed. Both of his parents just looked at him in silence as he shouted into the void. When he was done, Minato looked over at Kushina. He is definitely your son, he declared. All that got him was a punch to the shoulder. Naruto, she said, looking away from her husband and getting the attention of her son. Do you remember when you and your friends were facing off Orochimaru and he had me summoned? How would you know about that if you were inside me? He demanded. I may just be the chakra of Kushina Uzumaki, but it was enough to see through her eyes when her soul was summoned, she explained patiently. I saw what happened and I remembered it afterwards. Let me guess, you're embarrassed and ashamed of me, the voice the blonde spoke with was both sarcastic and accusatory. Nothing of the sort. You made your choice and there's nothing we can do about it. Not to mention you kept your head in a situation that looked to be designed for you to lose it. Besides, we would still love you anyway, Minato chimed in. Kushina nodded her agreement. Naruto just stared at the two of them in disbelief for a couple of seconds. And here I thought you would want me to stay in the village. You've made your choice, Naruto, his father said, repeating his wife. If you have decided to stay away from Konoha, it is your choice. Then why do I feel this way about the place? The blonde asked, suddenly sounding angry. Why do I have something in my head trying to convince me to come back? To rejoin the shinobi ranks? He sounded like he really wanted the answer to the question. Why do I feel like I care about those two when I know that I don't? That's something you will have to figure out on your own, his mother told him. But even though you don't want to be a Konoha shinobi, it doesn't mean you have to cut ties with the village. But I want to cut ties with the village. I want to be far away from the place and to be left alone. Is that too much to ask? If you wanted to be alone, then why are you in the village, helping it now? She asked back. It sounded like an innocent question, but there was also a tone of curiosity to it. If the looks on her and Minato's faces were anything to go by, they actually were curious. I'm here because I made a promise to help get rid of the Akatsuki, he told them. That's it. He is definitely your son. This time, Kushina said that to Minato, who could only shrug his shoulders and reply. But let me tell you something, young man. You are not alone at all, she told Naruto, lecturing him. Of course I'm alone, he protested. Look at me. I have no family to speak of. The one person I thought of a grandfather is dead. There is no I can really talk to. Whatever he was going to say next was cut off by the cry of pain he uttered when the redhead among them thumped him hard on the head. You're not alone, you know, she told him again, looking a little angry. You have friends all around you. They are your family, you know. Even though there are times when you wish they weren't around, they are still your friends and family. She poked his chest each time she finished a sentence. If you shut them out, you would truly be alone. Family isn't just flesh and blood, you know. As he backed away from his mother and her poking finger, Naruto realized she was right. His friends were his family. He had pretty much treated them as such, so why would he try to think any differently of them? There was the slightest feeling of annoyance and disappointment in the back of his head when he realized this. Aha! I have you now! The QB declared before his presence disappeared completely. If either of his parents had heard the fox, they didn't say anything about it. You're right. They are my family, Naruto admitted quietly. I'm sorry. I didn't know why I was thinking like that. You needn't apologize to us, his father told him with a warm smile. You're troubled, Naruto. But your friends can help you. How can they help me with something that might be trying to brainwash me into rejoining the village? He asked back. You don't know until you try asking them. Besides, you have a girlfriend. The warm smile became more of a grin. I'm sure you could tell her anything. And there's the former student of FS Sensei, the younger blonde declared in a deadpan tone. When he saw that both of them were confused, he elaborated. I'm talking about Jiraiya. What does the FS stand for? Fucking sadist. His response made both Minato and Kushina look at each other with grins before howling in laughter. Had they not supported each other, they would have fallen to the ground. Oh Kami, that is just too true, the Yondaime Hokage stated as he tried to get back up on his feet. I wish I had thought of that when I was younger. It's a good one, Kushina agreed as she stood back up alongside him. But as the laughter died away, she looked at her son. But we know you love Azula, Naruto. And we know she loves you in return. You can tell her about what's happening. Can I really tell her something like that? Wait, how do you know she loves me when you've never met her yourselves? He asked them. We may or may not have given her a visit via a dream, Minato remarked causally. What? How could you even? He trailed off when he noticed that they were beginning to fade away. What's happening? Oh, it looks like our chakra is running out, his father commented as he looked at his own fading hand. What does that mean? Naruto asked, sounding more and more worried. It means we'll be gone soon, he answered. Sad expressions formed on his and his wife's face. We put our chakra into the seal so we could talk to you once. And now since our chakra is running out, our time is up. So this is goodbye? The younger blonde was sad to see them leave after just meeting them for the first time. He had so much to talk about with them now that he realized that he wanted to talk to them. In a sense, yes, Kushina answered. But in another sense, it's not. Do you remember what you told your friend Shikamaru while the both of you were in the cemetery? He did it with amazing clarity. Those who you've lost will live on in you, he said, almost to himself. Both of his parents nodded their agreement. And so we will, Minato told him with a warm smile. As his parents faded more and more away, the younger blonde grabbed both of them and pulled them into a hug at the same time. Mom, Dad, he said, calling them that for the first time. Thank you? Tears formed in his eyes and threatened to fall, but he wouldn't let them. While both of them had been surprised by the hug, they smiled and hugged him back. We love you, Naruto, Kushina told him as they disappeared. We will always love you. They faded away and he found himself back in the bathroom. He wiped the tears from his eyes. While he still wasn't sure he could tell the others about the voice, he was still glad his parents had corrected his thinking. Honestly, how did he start thinking like that? Thanks for that, QB, he told the fox. When he didn't get a response, he didn't think anything of it and went for the door. When he opened it, Azula was there, hand outstretched like she had been going for the handle. She saw the state of dress he was in, a towel with still somewhat wet hair. She blushed and looked away. Sorry, I didn't know that you were in, she began to say, only to get interrupted when he pulled her into a tight hug. I love you, he told her as he held her. I probably don't tell you that enough times, but I still love you. I don't want to ever lose you. I want to stay with you for the rest of my life. While initially surprised by the hug, when she heard those words, her heart melted. She returned the hug. I love you too, she said into his ear. I love you so much. He smiled when he heard those words. Thank you? He told her before kissing her. She returned it. While it may have started out as a chaste one, the kisses got hotter as they continued. Hands soon began wandering around, feeling the other's body. As she traced a hand over his stomach, Naruto shuddered with pleasure in her arms. But with that one single motion, the towel fell off of his waist. She now realized that she had a completely naked blonde in her arms. Sorry, she immediately apologized, desperately trying not to look down. But instead of looking embarrassed, the blonde just looked at her and smiled. He went for a spot on her neck and kissed it. The sensations that went through her made her gasp and arch her back. When she did, his quick hands had opened up her vest and shirt, which fell to the ground. The only thing she now wore on her torso was the necklace of the Shodaime Hokage. There's nothing to be sorry about, he told her once he was done kissing her neck. If you're going to see all of me, I would like to see all of you. When she saw the gleam in his eyes, she had a feeling about what was going to happen, as she had tried to do it the night of her birthday. Suddenly, she felt nervous. Are you sure you want to? She asked. You didn't want to last time. Last time, I was doubtful of our relationship, and I didn't want to admit that I love you. I don't have that problem anymore. I'm not sure what to do. Thinking about it, she didn't really know how she was going to proceed that night, or any other night she tried to seduce him. Don't worry. He hoisted her into his arms and grabbed her rear. On instinct, she wrapped her legs around him to hold, and judging by the smile on his face, that was the right move. I'll be gentle at first. He carried her into the bedroom, kissing her the entire way. Well, that was a bit of a bust, Naruto stated as he and the rest of his team made their way through the forest. It had been 3 weeks since Sasuke had been brought back to Konoha. Once they had known that Sasuke was going to be fine, they had gone back on missions like usual. Like before, they were looking for information, but this time they were looking for the location of the Akatsuki. That would depend on your definition of a bust, Gaki, Jiraiya said in response. They had gone to one of the neighboring countries surrounding the Land of Fire looking for information. They found information, but it wasn't what some of the team were looking for. All we got was a name and a possible country. I'd call that a bit of a bust, the blonde replied. We're not sure how to get there at all, though. We got something, didn't we? Sokka asked, vaguely annoyed at his teammate's attitude. I said a bit, he retorted, offended that it sounded like he had thought it was all for nothing. And that's a point to him, Azula remarked, earning herself a grin from her boyfriend and making her blush slightly in return. The last time she saw that grin was in the bedroom, just before he had pinned her to the wall and took her there. Ever since that night, they had frequently danced the bedroom tango, although not as frequently as Sokka and Suki. At first, they tried to keep it a secret, but were found out by Jiraiya. Surprisingly enough, he didn't ask for any details. Still, something is better than nothing, June said from atop of Nyla, leading the way. But where is this mountain's graveyard? Suki asked. A possible country isn't much to go on. We could be going on a dead-end chase. Kinda makes you wish for the old days, Sokka mused aloud. Naruto looked over at him with a confused look. What are you talking about, the old days? He asked. We're teenagers, Sokka. We are too young to have old days. I was talking about during the war. You know, the one where we went around our side of the planet with you, Azula, and Zuko coming after us? And that's a point to him, June commented. Nyla hissed in agreement. Things were much simpler then, Sokka continued. Go here, learn this, talk to this person, and above all, defeat the Fire Lord. It was much simpler, see? They could see his point. They always do in hindsight, Jiraiya told him. Odds are in a few years, maybe even a decade, what we do now, we'll consider the old days. Except for you, said Azula. You already have old days, so you already have a lead on us. While the Toad Sage scowled, everyone else laughed. In any case, how long before we get back to the village? Suki asked. We're close, the Toad Sage answered her, glad to be moving on from the dig at him. I'd say we're about 1-2 hours away. He cast a look over at Naruto. He wasn't sure if the Kodoama Tsukumi were working or not, but the Toad Sage had seen the blonde grow more and more cordial with the Konoha 11 and the village in general. It was going quicker than before, but not completely. And there were times when Naruto would look a little confused after a talk, like he had no idea what he had just said. While that did give Jiraiya hope, it was inconsistent. But with any luck, The little surprise that was waiting for them back at the village would help somehow. Good, I could use some sleep, Naruto said, mostly to himself. Despite what the Kyuubi and his parents had urged him to do, he was still unsure of telling his team, and most definitely Azula, about what was in his head. It also didn't help the fact that he could still hear the voice speaking, trying to urge him to do something or say something that would make him even more loyal to the village. But even though he kept refusing, sometimes it would get through and he would do whatever it wanted him to do. And even though the fox had known about the voice, in the 3 weeks after that day, he still had no luck catching the voice. Are you sure you're thinking of something else? June asked him with a suggestive smirk on her lips. For the love of Kami, June, he said with a light blush on his cheeks, matching Azula's. I actually want to sleep. Who do you take me for, Sokka? The blush vanished from their faces and appeared on Sokka's and Suki's faces. You have a point there. Besides, with that supposed surprise FS Sensei has been telling us about, they're the only ones who could, she acknowledged before laughing aloud. Everyone else, with the exception of Sokka and Suki, joined in the laughter. The Water and Earth Paragon tried to not join the laughter, but the fact that what Naruto said was true and the laughter was infectious, made them join in soon. But in that brief moment of laughter, they had unconsciously dropped their guard. And it was taken advantage of. Shinra Tensei, a voice familiar to the blonde, spoke from the forest. Everyone, with the exception of Naruto and Jiraiya, was suddenly thrown into the forest opposite of where the voice came from. Both the blonde and the toad sage heard their shouts fill the air before being silenced by hitting trees. Oh, Kami saved me. It's them, Naruto realized with a deep sense of dread. It seems I misjudged the range, the voice of pain spoke. I had intended to make all but the Jinchuriki unconscious. All 6 of the pains stepped out from behind the surrounding trees, making their presence known to both Naruto and Jiraiya. But it will still be easier now, and much less time-consuming. When he saw the spiky-haired pain, Jiraiya's eyes went wide in shock and surprise. Is that you, Yahiko? He demanded. The pain in question tilted his head, like he was a dog listening to an odd sound. You see Yahiko in this pain? Interesting, but you were his sensei after all. What's going on here? The toad sage almost shouted. Conan said you were dead. You know this guy, FS Sensei? Naruto demanded, gesturing with his head at the spiky-haired pain. He was one of my former students, a kid named Yahiko. I met him, Conan, and another kid during the Second Shinobi World War. He stopped and looked more closely at the pain he knew. What happened to Nagato, Yahiko? Why do you and these other 5 people have the Rinnegan? This body is not Yahiko, Jiraiya-sensei, we are now Pain, the spiky-haired Pain gestured to the other Pains surrounding the two. As for Nagato, Conan was correct. He is dead. There was no hint of emotion in his voice. He sounded like he was just stating facts. If the blonde and the toad sage were being honest with themselves, it was a little unnerving. Where is Conan? Naruto asked as he looked around. He was trying to stall for time, hoping that his teammates would get back up and help even the odds. She is not here, the bald Pain said, swinging the attention over to him. We do not need her to watch over everything that we do. This is something that does not require her. Without saying anything more, the bald Pain charged straight at them. He went for Jiraiya, who saw him coming and stood ready. When he got close, the toad sage attacked first with a kick, forcing Pain onto the defensive. The spiky-haired Pain lifted his hand and pointed in the 2 combatants' direction. Naruto realized what he was trying to do and immediately threw 2 kunai at him. He saw the incoming projectiles and swung his hand in their direction. Shinra Tensei, he spoke, sending them flying away. Keep an eye on that one, Naruto shouted at Jiraiya as he leapt for the chubby Pain. He's like a magnet, able to draw or repel things with a jutsu. Is it continuous? He asked back as he ducked under a punch and tried to sweep the bald Pain's legs out from under him. It didn't work, but the bald Pain was forced to back off a little, allowing him to continue pressing the attack. No, but the delay between uses is only 5 seconds. Now cover your eyes. The blonde ordered as he pulled out a few smoke bombs and threw them to the ground, covering the area. As the Pains just stood there, waiting for the smoke to clear, Naruto and Jiraiya regrouped. What was that all about? The toad sage demanded as they hid in a nearby tree. A quick look past the trunk of the tree told them that their teammates were still unconscious. They can all see what one sees, Naruto hurriedly explained. You can't fight one when all of them can see you, otherwise they can see what you're doing from every possible angle and act accordingly. You have to fight them one-on-one. That's going to be difficult. Even he would have trouble against that kind of ability to see the battlefield. But he could see a way around it. You could counter it with your Kagebunshin. I was thinking the same thing. Overwhelm them and then isolate them, the blonde agreed with a nod. If they isolated each of the pains, their ability to see what the others saw would be greatly hampered, if not completely avoided. Okay, when the smoke clears, you take the lead, Jiraiya ordered. Isolate the pains. I'll take care of the bald one. Alright, but be careful. Whatever that bald pain, it isn't a normal person. What do you mean? Before he could answer, the sound of a tree snapping filled the air and their ears. Shinra Tensei Pain said. The tree began to fall, crashing into the ground. The entire forest shook from the impact of the fallen tree, and yet, the other members of Team Paragon would not stir. You okay, Gaki? The Toad Sage demanded. When the tree had begun to fall, he had leapt clear of it and landed safely. But he hadn't kept track of Naruto. I'm pinned, the blonde answered. He hadn't been so lucky or quick in getting off of the tree. The end result was he had his arm caught by a tangle of branches and it was hard to get it out. You know, Jiraiya-sensei, you really should try to learn to keep your voice down when you discuss strategy, Pain's voice idly commented as the ponytailed one came into view. It rendered the smoke cover moot. That one can use summons, Naruto informed Jiraiya as he tried to get his hand free. What kind of summons? He asked back, staying between the blonde and the member of the Akatsuki. I don't know. He summoned something when he went after B, that's all I can really tell you. How helpful, he muttered to himself as he refocused his attention back on the pain in front of him. When it looked like he was about to clasp his hands together, the Toad Sage leapt into combat, flipping through the hand seals. Ranjishigami no Jutsu! He cried, his hair lengthening and taking the shape of a lion's mouth. The ponytailed Pain just watched in silence as the hair of the Toad Sage came flying at him. When it got into striking distance, he simply jumped out of the way. But the jutsu wouldn't let him go that easily, and neither would its user. It curved back into the air and went after him. Wherever he would land, the hair of Jiraiya would be right behind him. It ended when the Pain stumbled slightly. It was enough for the jutsu to catch him. As Jiraiya concentrated, 2 strands of hair rose up and began to wrap around Pain's neck. Look out on your left, Naruto suddenly warned him. He cast an eye over to his left, and saw the long-haired Pain coming straight at him with a hand raised. Not sure if it was the same as the ability, as the spiky-haired Pain, he would figure out if that was Yahiko or not later. Much later, he stayed out of reach and also directed some of his hair at him too. No, don't do that, his student told him as the hair flew at the intended target. What? Why? Jiraiya demanded. He got his answer when the pudgy Pain leapt in front of the long-haired Pain and held his hands. That's why. That pain can be absorbed. True to Naruto's words, there was a brief flash of light as a barrier appeared between the chubby Pain and the Toad Sage's hair. When the hair struck the barrier, it recoiled like it had been stung by something. It fell lifelessly to the ground and returned to its normal length. The hair holding the ponytailed Pain also fell to the ground and returned to the normal length, allowing the person it had been holding to get free. Without saying a word, the 3 began to attack Jiraiya. Come on, arm, Naruto snarled as he tried to get it free. Get out already. He craned his neck to look over at the rest of Team Paragon. Hope rose in his chest as he saw that they were beginning to stir. They're coming around, he thought with relief. We just need to hold on. Meanwhile, the Toad Sage was barely able to hold his own against 3 of the Pains. He was using just about every trick and method of fighting he knew to stay alive. His 3 opponents were working in perfect unison against him. He was forced to keep the ponytailed Pain from trying to summon anything while also keeping the long-haired Pain out of touching distance, all the while fighting the bald Pain. If his opponents were having any difficulty, they did not show it. Instead, they kept blank expressions on their faces. As they fought, the other 3 Pains appeared. But they didn't join the fight. Instead, they just hung back and observed. Try to break free from your fight, FS-sensei, Naruto shouted when he saw the other 3. Go for the bulky-looking one. Why would I do that? Jiraiya asked as he danced away from the long-haired pain while also simultaneously throwing a kunai at the ponytailed pain, forcing him to catch it, and keeping his hands apart, and planting a foot in the bald pain's torso, sending him stumbling to the ground. His cloak got caught on a nearby rock and was torn off, revealing his additional arms and blade tail. He can revive the other pains. If he's taken out, they stay down for good. Hearing a groan, he looked over and saw Sokka sitting up. Sokka, help me get free! The blonde shouted at the tribesman. What? Sokka asked in return, a little dazed. As his vision cleared and he saw how his teammate was trapped, he immediately drew his Zanpakuto and rushed over. When he was by Naruto's side, he began to hack at the trapping branches. Suki and Azula had also come to that point, along with Akela and Nyla. The wolf automatically went to Sokka's side and tried to help free Naruto. Suki went after the pudgy pain, her fans out and ready to use. She attempted to use them to distract the pudgy pain's sight, with only marginal success. Azula attacked the long-haired pain with a flying spin kick, bending fire at him and sending him back. The only one who didn't really move was Nyla, who was attempting to wake June up. Hurry up, Naruto urged Sokka. I'm working on it, he replied, hacking away at the branches. Akela was gnawing at a different branch in the tangle, trying to get the blonde free in another way. Naruto could get his arm free, but it was a slow process. Jiraiya, now free of two opponents, was able to attack the bald pain more freely. Drawing a kunai that seemed to glisten somehow, he approached the bald pain and struck quickly. The bald pain tried to move out of the way, but the kunai was still able to shallowly pierce his side. When he saw the blood fly, the toad sage grinned and kicked the bald pain away. Now for the next one, he declared silently, moving directly for the bulky pain. What happened next would be etched into Team Paragon's memories for the rest of their lives. Just as June was finally coming, Jiraiya was charging at the bulky pain, the kunai at the ready. But just as he reached the intended pain, the spiky-haired pain, who everyone had forgotten about, stepped in between the two, raised his hand, and said, Shinra Tensei. Silence seemed to engulf them all as Jiraiya backwards into the air, only to end with a sickening sound, like meat being skewered, as he was impaled on the blade tail of the bald pain. No! Naruto screamed as the toad sage slipped off the blade tail and fell face first into the ground. The blonde began to struggle even more fiercely to get free. The spiky-haired pain saw his reaction and how he tried to get free. We are done here, he declared. The other pains all grouped around him. Those who had combatants were able to disengage easily as their opponents were staring at the body of Jiraiya in stunned shock. They leapt away, leaving the team alone in the forest. There! Sokka cried as he finally cut through the branch. Naruto pulled his arm out and raced over to Jiraiya, rolling his body over. The toad sage was still as he faced the sky. Ow, he breathed out, blood seeping out of the wound. I guess one was the only one I could get. Just stay still, FS-sensei, the blonde told him. He tried to pull some medical supplies out, only to have a hand grab his, stopping him. Don't bother Gaki, he said, gently admonishing. This is it for me. No. No, it's not. You are going to live, do you hear me? You're not going to die. He refused to believe that Jiraiya was going to die. Yes, I am. I only wish I could have gotten more of the pains. What are you talking about? Sokka asked him. He held the kunai up for a brief moment, letting everyone see the glistening on it. One of Orochimaru's poisons, he explained. It targets the chakra, making the user lose control, weaken, and eventually dies of chakra poisoning. There's no antidote or cure for it. How long have you had that? Suki asked. A while, he admitted with a wheeze. His breathing began to slow. The blood seeped out faster. Come on, you perverted bastard. Just hold on until we get back to the village, Naruto begged him. Tsunade will fix you right back up and you'll be fine. He gave a weak smile in return. We both know I wouldn't make it to the gate alive. Still, at least I didn't die a meaningless death. I lived long and well. He turned his head to the side and spat the blood that was filling his mouth. The blood didn't fly far as he had probably intended. It only went a few inches from his mouth. Hey, Naruto, he said, his voice getting weaker. Yes? Whatever you decide to do about Konoha, I won't judge you. It's your choice, the Toad Sage promised. He smiled sadly at those words. How would you be able to do that if you're going to be dead like you think you are? Do you know some way to come back from the grave? Everyone smiled at that small jab. Even though it wasn't a good one, they knew it was probably going to be the last one between the two. Jiraiya could grin very weakly at that. Fair point, he conceded. Well, at least promise me something. His voice was getting quieter and weaker with every word he spoke. What? Promise me that you'll keep writing. I think it's time I put my pen down. That last word seemed to disappear halfway past his lips as his breathing stilled and life finally went out of his eyes. Jiraiya, the Toad Sage of Konohagakure, was dead. As Naruto stared at the body of his sensei, it finally seemed like the fact had reached him. As he realized it, that small voice in his mind tried to make its move, taking the opportunity to try and make the blonde more loyal to Konoha with the death of Jiraiya. But that was a fatal mistake, as the Kyuubi, who had been chasing that voice ever since he learned about it, had been waiting in wait. Hello there, the fox said with a savage grin as he grabbed hold of the voice and everything it represented. I believe you have been doing something that neither my Jinchuriki nor I agree with. It's going to stop now. 4 days later, Jiraiya's funeral was held, and every single person in Konoha attended. Shops and hotels were closed and drinking establishments would be the same until nightfall, where they would open with incredibly low prices for drinks, so that people could raise a cup to the memory of Jiraiya. It was a time-honored tradition of Konoha. The academy and other schools in the village had the day cancelled. The fire daimyo had even declared that the day was to be one of mourning. The land of fire, and Konoha most of all, had lost one of their heroes. As everyone in the village filled the streets, bowing their heads in remembrance as the funeral bells rang, those who were of high rank in the village and those who knew the man personally stood before his grave in the cemetery. Tsunade stood in front of the headstone, facing everyone else. She began to speak, her voice choked and filled with emotion she tried to shove back down. It was hard to speak like a leader speaking of a subordinate when said subordinate had been her teammate and friend. We are here to remember and honor the life of Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, she started again, trying to keep her voice level. He had served the village faithfully throughout his years, even when I had lost faith and Orochimaru had betrayed it. He was the kind of shinobi other shinobi worth their kanai should have strived to be. And although some of his habits may have been considered weird, odd, or downright perverted, he was a good man. A small smile came upon her face as she looked back at the grave. And he was a good friend too. As she spoke, Naruto glanced over at the people standing by him and his team. As it turned out, the little surprise Jiraiya had told Team Paragon was supposed to be a visit from Team Avatar. He had been planning it for a week before his death, and they had only arrived that day. They had waited at the gate along with Tsunade, who was there to keep an eye on them, to surprise Team Paragon, only to see them coming up to the gate with a body on their shoulders, walking like they were in a funeral march. And now, they stood quietly beside him, wearing white clothes, which Team Paragon, with the exception of Naruto, also wore, as opposed to the black that everyone else was wearing. Would anyone like to share something about him one last time? Tsunade asked, getting Naruto's attention again. Everyone there could tell she wanted to say something, but as the Hokage, she had to let someone else start. I would, Kakashi said aloud as he stepped forward. It was a bad time after the Kyuubi attack. Minato-sensei had been killed along with his wife. I tried to bury myself in work to try and ignore the thought that I had failed them and the pain that came with it. But it didn't work, and I was slowly falling into a depression. That was when Lord Jiraiya found me. He told me he knew a surefire way to cheer me up and get me out of my depression. I told him that nothing could do that. He just grinned, handed me a copy of the first Ika Ika book, and said, "Get back to me when you're done with that, and see if you think it still won't help." So I read the book, and in the end, he was right. It's thanks to Lord Jiraiya that I was able to serve the village to my full capacity again, and that I became a fan of Ika Ika. No one said a word about what he said as he stepped back. In all honesty, no one had really heard that story before. Suddenly, Kakashi's habit of reading the series in public made a lot more sense to a lot of them. Zuko was the one who stepped forward next. He had grown his hair out a little since Naruto, and his team had seen him last and was a little brawnier too, although his clothes hid the fact. I remember this one day in Ba Sing Se, he began. Jiraiya had been going around the city, and I went after him to make sure he didn't cause any incidents. I eventually found him sitting at a table in a marketplace, writing in a small book. It had been so odd to see him like that, not chasing after every single beautiful woman that crossed his path, so I stayed silent and watched. It was later I learned that he had been writing down observations about the people he saw and was creating characters from what he saw. It was one of those things that would make a person realize that Jiraiya was a far more complex man than you would originally think. There was this one time, when my father brought me into the council room when I was a mere genin, Hayashi said, stepping forward as Zuko stepped back. Both the clan heads and the civilian council had been arguing about who would succeed Sandaime as Hokage, with both Tsunade and Orochimaru as the favorites. After a few minutes watching silently, I joined the argument. It had soon left the council room and went to a drinking establishment where the Sannin were. Both Tsunade and Orochimaru soon joined the argument, each for their own side. When someone had suggested Jiraiya for a candidate, the man himself spat out the sake he had been drinking and asked that someone if he was, and I quote, out of his fucking mind? A few people laughed at that. He then began to list off the reasons why he shouldn't be Hokage or even let close to it. After that, he berated everyone there for the argument, saying that the Sandaime wasn't dead yet and had plenty of years left. He also told us that we should also look at the next generation, not just our own. He said, for all we know, the next Hokage could be a student of mine. To this day, I am still convinced that Lord Jiraiya knew exactly who the Yondaime Hokage would be. The shinobi shared a smile at those words. In that sense, Jiraiya had been a bit of a prophet, as his student did become the Hokage. I remember that day as well, Tsunade said with a smile on her face as well. What I can always remember the clearest was the look on Orochimaru's face when the sake was sprayed onto his face. It wasn't something she was going to forget. But what I can remember even more clearly was when we found out that Jiraiya was going to be a father for the first time. Everyone in the village knew about his habits and how he kept sleeping around. So when he first heard the news, we all thought he was going to ignore the situation for as long as he could and even try to avoid the girl. But Jiraiya surprised us by stepping up and accepting responsibility, even going as far as offering to marry her. All through the 9 months of her pregnancy, he was nervous and uncertain, not sure he would be a good father even when both I and Orochimaru, and even Sarutobi-sensei had assured him that he would be. But when his firstborn was a stillborn and the mother had died in childbirth, he broke down and wept. I always remember that day, because it reminded me that no matter what he would do or cause, Jiraiya was still a man who wanted a family and always cried when he was denied the chance. One by one, someone stepped up and told a story they knew about Jiraiya, how the man helped them or influenced their choices. No matter what kind of story it was, they told it, and they always had something positive to say about the Toad Sage. Finally, when the last person had finished their story, they all looked at Naruto. Your turn, Kit, the Kyuubi quietly urged him. He stepped forward in silence and turned to face the crowd, just like the others had before him. The first time I met FS Sensei was when he had been peeking on the women's side of the hot springs, he began. I called him a pervert for it. He objected, declaring that he was a super pervert instead. And that was just one of the many things I was proven wrong about him. He was silent for a moment before continuing. When it came to training someone, he was a sadist. But he also demanded perfection, or something close to it. He acted like a buffoon, and yet there were times when he seemed to look directly at the being of someone. And though what he wrote may not have been the most celebrated of books, he knew how to write a story. He was a friend, he was a comrade, he was a father figure, but above all, he was a shinobi. And he will be missed. He turned to face the headstone, so no one could see the tears that threatened to fall down his face. I will miss him. He placed the flower in his hands on the grave. As he stepped back, others began to walk forward, placing the flowers on the grave. Once they had done so, they began to trickle away. From a distance, it looked like a crowd that slowly began to disappear into the street. When the cemetery had only Tsunade and Naruto left, they stared in silence at the grave. It was finally the Hokage who spoke. We need to get going. He didn't say anything in response, he just followed her out of the cemetery. The few people who were still in the street bowed their heads to Tsunade. They knew that she would personally be mourning for the loss of Jiraiya. They didn't pay any attention to Naruto, and he didn't pay any attention to them. The two of them just kept on walking, entering the Hokage building. They made their way through the building until they entered her office, with the rest of the clan heads waiting for them. Tsunade walked around to the other side of her desk and faced the rest of the people in the room. As most of you are aware, Jiraiya left me his last will and testament. It has been revised as of last week and was given to me with the instructions of being read after his funeral. Her voice thickened with the last word. But she cleared her voice and began to read the will aloud. This is the last will and testament of Jiraiya, the Toad Sage of Konohagakure. In the event of my death, I bequeath the following items to the following people. To the Inuzuka clan, I give the deed to the forest areas to the south and southwest of the village, as I know you all have been using it for years for tracking exercises, even without my permission. To the Akimichi clan, I give you all the right to build on any building in the village I own. I only ask that one of them be rebuilt as a restaurant that has my name somewhere on the sign. To the Yamanaka clan, I give the right to access any greenhouses I have used and own in the village, as there are many rare plants and flowers in them that you will be able to use. To the Nara clan, I give my notebooks of different medical applications and techniques I have seen in my travels. With any luck, there are some that you haven't found and will record properly in your medicine books. To the village of Konohagakure, I give the sum of 2 billion ryo and half of my investments, to be used wisely. To my teammate and friend Tsunade, I give my collection of rare and vintage sake, with the request that the first one to be opened is used to toast me. I also give you the other half of my investments, in the hope that you'll finally pay off your debts. To my student and godson Naruto, I give the original manuscripts of the entire Ika Ika collection, along with first draft details of characters and rough sketches, as you are the only person I trust enough to not burn them. I ask that you publish the last book of the series if I have not done so before my death. I also give to you the remainder of my money, with the request that you first use it to help create the 5th country of the Bending Countries. It is my wish that these terms be given to the correct people, and that they will stop once in a while to remember me. Jiraiya the Toad Sage of Konohagakure. She lowered the will and looked at the clan heads. Are there any objections to what was stated in the will? She asked them. They all shook their heads in the negative. The Hyuga clan will help the civilian council with the proper use of Lord Jiraiya's given investments, Hayashi told her. The Toad Sage had made many investments over the years and most of them had kept him well funded. To be given half would be a great boon to the village, if they were used correctly. Thank you, she replied. If there are no further problems, I would like to speak with Naruto alone. The clan heads took that as the invitation to leave. Soon, the room only had the 2 blondes left. Are you going to do what he asked of you? She asked him after a moment of silence. Yes. Will you do it from the village or? I know what you would want me to say, Tsunade, he said, cutting her off. It's not happening. As soon as the job we have here is done, we're gone. Ever since the Kyuubi had destroyed the voice inside his head, having torn it apart, the blonde had a sense of clarity he hadn't realized he lost. He now remembered and knew where his loyalties belonged, no ifs or buts about it. Quite frankly, he wondered how he could be so doubtful in the first place. I see, she said quietly. She now knew his stance and opinion were firm. While she was glad the Kotohama Tsukumi was broken, it saddened her to see him make his choice. His gaze, which had been hardened since the will was read, softened somewhat. I'll leave you alone, he told her, walking to the door and leaving the office. She did nothing for a couple of seconds before finally engaging the silence seal. Once she knew it was active, she broke down and cried like a baby. The next morning, Shizen would find her at the desk, sleeping but still crying. Naruto was alone in the house. Azula and the others, along with Aang and the rest of Team Avatar, had all gone to a nearby bar to raise a cup to Jiraiya. But he stood in front of the safe that was in the house. He had said that he would take a look at it when he and the clones had been cleaning the place, but a mixture of being busy all the time and some shape of an idea that he should keep away prevented him opening it. But with the death of Jiraiya, he was done. He could hear Tobi's words echoing in his head as he stared at the safe. The next time we meet will be the one where you give us yourself voluntarily. He would go to them. That much was certain. And he would go voluntarily. But he wouldn't give up. No, he was going so he could finally end it. Jiraiya's death had been the last straw. It had given him the resolve to go through with the idea. And the minute that resolve came into being, the idea that he should leave the safe alone disappeared. It took you long enough, the voice of the skull said to him. Even though he knew it wasn't actually there, he could see it sitting on the top of the safe. Thanks for watching, Shinobi Squad. If you enjoyed this what if, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next twist. Drop your theories in the comments, I'm always reading. Want more Naruto heat? Check out the other videos on the channel. Stay sharp, stay awesome, And remember, even shadow clones need love. Peace out, shinobi!